Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 3, Episode 14. I'm one of your hosts, Alejandro. With me is the caveman finally, seeing the light of day with internet.
Paul, I am back in the 21st century, everybody. It's good to be back.
Yeah. And a very special guest who is referenced in the show very often. In fact, when I went back to listen to old episodes, he was sort of mentioned in some of the very early episodes before I really knew them. Your friend and old buddy from back in GameStop, Duncan Godet, right?
Yes, yeah, Duncan Godet. Hello, everybody.
Godet, and who we call Duchess in our Destiny clan. How are you doing, Duchess?
Doing pretty good today. I'm actually quite excited to be able to finally be on the show.
Yes, you're one of our most avid listeners also, which is also really cool. So, and this has been in the works for a while. In fact, just for behind the scenes stuff, I wanted Duchess to be with in our show for when E3 got canceled, and unfortunately because of your schedule and whatever you work now, that couldn't happen. But we were no, we gotta get you in sometime in April, and then it happened. So, and now you get to see Paul after you haven't seen it since his move.
Right? Yeah, I know it's been almost 2 months since I've gotten to see you.
Roughly, yeah, because we would have met up maybe a week or so before I left, I think, and then I've been just dark ever since, practically. At least we've been able to text back and forth a little bit. I think I briefly heard your voice at some point, but it's been a slow process coming back, very slowly.
Yeah, wasn't it one of the videos that was posted in the Discord in our Destiny chat? Because I know that OC,
so.
The one that where you're trying to do the sword skate touches and then just straight fell.
Yep. Absolutely botched the sword skate.
Yeah. Man, I can't wait for our clan to listen to this episode. So shout out to probably Aussie, Fire, Spartan, and either Mano or Guns. I know they sometimes listen, so this episode is dedicated to you all. So, and Paul, we're 3 episodes away from episode 100.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, episode 100. When we came back on May the 4th, 2021.
Gosh, what a time it's been, huh?
Yep, so much has happened. And I've been re-listening to those old episodes just to kind of reminisce and remember what was happening around that time. Very funny stuff, but I'll save those details for whenever we get to episode 100 just to talk about what the early part of the show was. So, that enough of the preambles, because this is the X Button Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Fridays from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links and the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-gaming, which I think it's changed to Anchor for Spotify or something like that. I have to really check because Spotify bought Anchor, which I'm super salty about. But besides that, if you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, without any preambles, Paul, let me hear from you, what you've been playing while you were in your deserted island.
So, in order of kind of the amount that I've played them, starting off from, I guess, right to left on this list, is Moonlighter. Is a little indie game that I had bought forever ago when it was on a deep sale. Essentially, the idea being that it's fantasy world R Us, and there's a dungeon that has 5 categories or whatever, and you are a shopkeeper that sells goods from the dungeon by day, and then by night you go into the dungeon to collect pieces of the monsters and things that people drop when they've died. And then you take those things, you teleport out whenever you feel like you've gotten far enough, and then the cycle begins anew. You sell those items on your little table, you expand your shop. Really adorable, little top-down, well-animated pixel game. I would definitely recommend trying it out because it's an interesting process, but not a roguelite. But it has some of the earmarks of some of that quick combat and such. But after a while, I was all right, well, this is a good kind of game, and then I jumped into some of the more big-name items because I've been on a bit of a Star Wars kick lately for obvious reasons.
Yeah, we've all been. By the way, that new episode of The Mandalorian, right? The one this week? Yeah. So,
Good
do
stuff.
you agree is the best episode of the series? I don't think so, but I think it's up there.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I would say it's almost cheap because of how much it forwards the plot. It makes me like it more. but at the same time, I feel like there were some other episodes that I technically enjoyed more, like the original Minds of Mandalore episode, I think 2 or 3, I can't remember.
Episode 2 from the
Two.
season.
And then I really liked the one that had Zeb in it. I can't remember which one that was. I don't know why
The
that's what
pirate
I
one.
remember from
Episode
it. Yeah,
5.
that's the one. I really liked that episode. That was just great. Um, yeah, so I think those are my two favorites, but this was like just for sheer moving the plot, or not even moving, it just like started the plot essentially almost.
The entire
Um,
season.
yeah, more or less. But I mean, not to go into too many details about a TV show, and this is a video game podcast, but I feel like in the end, it's going to justify itself, and people are going to enjoy the season a lot more on rewatches, where a lot of people they started off loving season 2, and then they kind of turned into this like, oh, it's just an Easter egg hunt of like different people from Dave Filoni's
It was
animated characters.
it was backdoor pilot for Dave Filoni. It's like
Yeah.
expansion
And, like,
characters, but it was still a really good season. I disagree
loved it.
With that sentiment.
Yeah, but I feel like just like that situation happened, this is going to be one of those like people aren't going to understand the thread until it's all out, and then they're going to be like, "Oh, this was fantastic actually," because people lost their ability to have patience and let things actually play out. They're just like, "Oh, you haven't explained this yet? I hate this. This is terrible. You haven't explained it yet. You have to show, don't tell." And I'm like, "That's not how this works, buddy."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that side of it. But anyway, yeah, I went back to 2005's Jedi Academy and played the heck out of that game
Still have to go
because,
back to that one. Yeah, because
as
it's so
we've
good.
talked about it, it's a game that looks rough at first, and then when you get knee deep into it, it is just the most fun that you could probably imagine. And I wish games were made kind of like that, where you could just break the game in such a way that is just very entertaining, very heartwarming, very earnest. And I miss days when Star Wars games were like that, and just the really dorky voice acting. I think it was James Marsden is like your buddy, who is just funny because I'm rewatching Boy Meets World. Duncan might know this because James Marsden and Will Friedle are both in it as best buddies, are best buddies in real life, and continue to act together in a bunch of other things because we also watched Kim Possible, and they're also in that as best buddies in that show.
I forgot they were in that show.
I did too. And then I was like, I know this voice. I know this voice. Why do I know this voice? And I just did a whole thing rabbit hole. Bless Elizabeth for sitting through that while I went on IMDb. That's just my whole thing. 90% of my personality is going, hey, I know that person, and then spending 20 minutes.
Yeah,
looking it
you're
up.
like doing the Leo DiCaprio meme of him sitting and like pointing at the screen.
Yeah.
I'm just.
I know that. So yeah, that's 2 of my 4. The next one, I guess I'll jump straight into Fallen Order. That I revisited. I did a very specific method where I started with having finished the game already and went back and like got collectibles, did all the combat trials, all the stuff that didn't require me to like restart the game. Just changing up the look, the lightsabers, just having a good time of it all. And then when I finally decided to go back to the game, I finished the intro segment and went, yeah, I think I'm done. And it almost it hurt
new,
for a second.
It's New Game Plus sucks, right? Yeah.
It is a very not well done New Game Plus process. To just explain it to anybody briefly, for most games, like for instance the other game I'll at least mention, it's God of War Ragnarok. They just recently did a New Game Plus patch. I'll get to that in a second. But everything you have, all of your stats, all of your weapons, all not just like cosmetic items, but physical things that make you stronger and better in the game, carry over naturally. That's what just about every New Game Plus does, and then you just boost off of that. Jedi Fallen Order does not do that. It keeps your cosmetic items, which is just your ponchos. Normally it's supposed to be your outfits, but there's a known bug in PS5, in the PS5 version, that deletes the outfit category from your game, and there is absolutely no way to do it on New Game Plus. You have to restart a new game and it is just a problem that apparently exists and was never fixed.
Yeah.
I thought I was crazy for the longest time, and then I looked it up just yesterday and found out, sure enough,
The Reddit,
it's a thing.
the Reddit post you sent me. I was like in
Yeah,
hysterics.
That's
I
kind of
can't
wild.
believe it. I know. So you can change all your ponchos, you can change BD1, you can change the mantis, and you cannot change your actual jumpsuit color.
So
It's
basically,
weird.
if someone wants to 100% that game, they have to like do it in normal play, not New Game Plus.
Yeah,
So
actually. Yeah, there's no way to do it. If it glitches out like that, it will not let you collect it because on my game it didn't list it as like I got the chests, but when I went to the spot where the chest was, it was already open as if I had opened it up already in the previous game. So keep that in mind if y'all trying to do things and it doesn't work for you.
So Duchess, when was the last time you played Fallen Order?
Probably around like when it came out.
Ooh, so
Like I kind of I blitzed through the game and like finished it. I did a couple of the combat trials and I was like, all right, I'm done because like I like Souls games. It was
This
very
isn't quite
fun for
one.
that.
This is
Right.
like a Souls like, but not like quite a super like. Because I feel you're more of a Souls savant because
Yeah.
I remember when I was like doing my Bloodborne replay last year that we were like in the Discord chat and you were kind of coaching me through the Kanehurst Castle boss fight. So it's like
Yeah.
like your knowledge is like that's like your beat basically.
Oh yeah. No, like FromSoft games are passion.
Yeah. Yeah. How many playthroughs have you done of Elden Ring now?
So on PC, I'm only on my third playthrough, but on PS5, I'm on my eighth or ninth.
Dang. So
Yeah.
14. Yeah. I'm just on my
Yeah.
third one. Paul, you haven't gone back to Elden Ring, right? You just beat it once and.
I technically, I think in the last year, well, that came out a year ago. From the last like month or two before I moved, I think I tried going back to it briefly, and I just ran around, found an extra dungeon or two because I was trying to do this thing where I would find all the dungeons I missed by pulling up like a Google image thing and then going around and finding that area just so I could see how many weapons I could find. And then like restarting a new game plus from there, because there's a few weapons that I've seen of but then like don't know what they're called and don't know where I would find them, so I'm like, I'll just go through and find all the dungeons. And then very quickly I was just like, this is going to be a war of attrition, it's going to make me hate this game, can't do that to myself, I'm going to turn it off and play something else. So that's what I ended up doing. Yeah, I still love it as much as possibly I could love a game, but at the same time,
You had your time.
it's one of those games that I know that if I try to revisit, I'm not going to enjoy it as much as I did, unless I fully played it in a different way, but I don't have the desire to try playing a different way, you know?
And not New Game Plus. And that's the key, like because I did my third playthrough not New Game Plus, just like as a fresh start.
Yeah.
And
And the game in those games is brutal.
yes, and especially because in my first run, like that's when I knew where Bloodhound Fang was, so I went to look for Bloodhound Fang from a fresh character. Went to Margaret the Fell, completely whipped his ass like in like 5 seconds, like deleted him. I was like, holy crap! And I didn't even have my summons because I had forgotten to go talk to Ronnie, the witch at the church. I was like, oh yeah, crap! I was like doing the bell. I was like, and you know who the character stares back is like, where's my thing? I was like, why is the summons not working? And then suddenly I was like, oh, I forgot that Rani, I need to wait for night and go to that first church. So it was like, that should be the way you try it, Paul. If you want to do like a different playthrough, like do it like a fresh start, like from zero. Because
Okay.
because
I'm
otherwise,
curious.
like it's just gonna keep scaling up, like with harder and harder and harder. It's,
I just love having all of my weapons and items and not having to go back and find where I found this random
Yeah.
sword that I really liked, because it was such a pain to build my like strength and intelligence build that lets me just delete bosses with the big Kamehameha
yeah.
laser.
Commodore,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that. I loved it so much, and the hoops I had to jump through to get everything for it make me be like, I don't want to do that again. So I might like, I'd do a faith build if I played the game again, because there are a lot of really cool spells, especially like the red lightning dragon ones that I just never touched because it wasn't like part of my stat list. So that's what I'd do if I would replay it. But if I ever have the time and desire to dive into that for another 2 months, then I'll
Uh,
let y'all know.
Duchess, do we know when Shadow of the Earth is coming?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they have a fixed date for it yet. I know we had a time frame, but no like actual like, oh yeah, it's coming out here.
Hmm.
Because I think last I saw it was basically it's coming out eventually.
Yeah, it was just like it's like an in development thing, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah, because they said I
exists.
think late 2023, so it's coming out this year.
Mm. Man, can you
Eventually.
imagine if that drops next to Armored Core? Because that's still supposedly this year.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that'd be wild.
Can you, the double whammy from stuff. That would be great. Now, do you think we'll be able to carry our stats, like our current builds, to that DLC? It
Most
seems
likely.
like a prequel, based on like that art that they shared.
I mean, like, so based off of previous examples, because like if you look at like with Dark Souls 1, they had the Abyss Walker DLC, and the Abyss Walker was technically a prequel to the base game. And they basically were like, oh, you know, you got pulled through time, so you could keep everything, and that was kind of their excuse.
Okay.
And I don't think this is going to be a prequel. I think this is more likely to be a pseudo continuance. And a lot of people think it's going to be about Mikola, which, to be fair, the game hints at it being Mikola.
Yeah.
And isn't Mikola on top of the horse? Like in that art? Yeah.
That's what it's speculated to be, because a lot of people originally thought, well, if it's a prequel, it might be Marika. But everyone's like, no. That would be weird if it was Marika. Like, obviously, this is something different. So, if it's a sequel, like a continuance of the story, then it has to be Mikola. Like, it has to be.
Now you reminded me that I think it was last Sunday that I watched like a 30-minute explanation of the entire lore of Elden Ring, and just hearing a bunch of the names next to each other is like in classic George R. R. Martin example of starting everything with the exact same letter.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of M names.
Americas, the Mikolas, and all of that. Oh man, but I can't wait for more Elden Ring. Elden Ring is so cool. And do you have anything to say about Ragnarok, Paul? I only played until the Thor fight from like New Game Plus. That's as much as I touched it.
So you're still in like firmly in the I keep saying prequel because y'all kept saying prequel prologue section of that game. Yeah, so just that it's a very well put out New Game Plus mode that continues everything. It kind of fixed a lot of the issues that I used to have with the New Game Plus in 2018's God of War.
With like difficulty,
which was
right?
that. Yes, where it ramps up the difficulty heavily and just assumes that you have all of the best stuff that was available in the previous game mode, because for most of us, we finished the game and then stopped playing the game and then picked it back up without either beating the Valkyries or finishing everything in the, was it Niflheim maze
Niflheim,
and
yeah.
stuff. Muspelheim's arenas and stuff, so we don't have like the really good armor sets. I jumped in and just got freaking hammered, and unfortunately, because I didn't like 100% all of the collectibles, I still had a few stats to pick up, which meant that I didn't have any of the New Game Plus materials to upgrade the new armor, because I could never upgrade anything because they replaced all the items in the chest with the new items. So it was a whole problem. But now they've pretty much fixed that, where it's like if you haven't picked it up, they're going to keep giving you the previous stat items. So like I had the Apples of Eden, where it was giving you extra health, but if you had all of them, it gives you the materials you need for upgrading. But I haven't had any issues either with upgrading all of my existing stuff. The new Black Bear armor is super cool.
With like the big fur.
It makes Kratos look so much more imposing, even more so than he already is. And then, as I mentioned to you, Alejandro, there's one tiny detail that I do not like about it.
Yeah, I was cracking up when you told me.
It's not that it clips with the Blades of Olympus. I've kind of just accepted that, and my brain doesn't register it anymore. It's the fact that the bear fur texture, it has little droplets of snow built into the skin of the cloak, and because it's only designed to be seen and used in the
winter
actual Fimbulwinter area, it's never meant to be seen anywhere besides a winter zone. So it's not actually the cloak reacting to the weather, it's that it is physically just has snow
It
perpetually
has like
on
a
its
snow
shoulders.
like stuck into
Just
the texture.
like a tiny bits of snow right on the ends of his fur. So like in gameplay, you don't see it at all, no issues. But in those like close-up cutscenes, it was clearly never meant to be used after that point in the game because you just see like little droplets of snow, even if Kratos is in deserts, in wherever he is. So it bugs me because it's like so tiny that I'm just like I just want to just get it off. And it makes me think like, did they just not put the snow as a layer? Like then I start thinking technically because then I'm like, why would you build that in to a point where it's not removable? It just feels like common sense that you just add that to another layer on top of the rest of it rather than create just one texture for the whole thing. But then that's where I get into like, all right, I'm not talking about anything that I know, so what do I know? But it's just like that tiny thing that bugs me. Besides that, though, it's fantastic. I love going back to it all. Not looking forward to sitting through the Ironwood section, I'll be honest, but then everything else up from there. So yeah, I'm gonna probably keep playing it as my single player choice game whenever I'm not playing Destiny now.
Yeah, now that you have internet, which we're gonna be raiding this week.
I know.
How many times have we done the raid now, Duchess? It feels like 10 times.
It's been quite a few times.
Yeah.
What's the runtime for one of those?
Like less than an hour sometimes.
Ooh,
it kind of
so
depends on the
easy.
Group. I think
that's true.
I think our fastest time currently is just shy of an hour.
Wow, that reminds me of what was it? Vault of Glass in 28 minutes or something that we did. Yeah, that was amazing.
And this is even easier than Vault of Glass because you're not gonna be like having to be like, okay, now you're gonna be telling right, middle, left, right. None of that. Like this is a raid where only 2 people have to do work, literally, and then the rest is just.
I love it.
Yeah, it's just about like knowing knowing how to kill crap in that one. So can't wait. I can't wait to like take you through that raid. And I told Duchess also, I'm like worried. I'm just worried about your luck.
He's worried you're going to get the raid exotic on the first try.
Hey, you got the raid exotic for Vow the Disciple.
And my third time.
Super
I still don't
early.
have it.
I've never even seen it besides that one screenshot I think I saw. But that reminds me, though, because I never updated it, I was able to finish the Lightfall campaign on Destiny before I got my internet fixed, because I went to my office where I was working. It was a day where everybody was kind of working from home. I decided to use the internet for some videos that I needed to sit through and watch. So I brought my PS5 to download things. Fortunately, the internet was terrible there. However, it was just good enough to actually play Destiny. So I just booted up the final mission and did a couple of cracks at it with no pressure on me. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing really good all of a sudden. And sure enough, with Strand and with my machine gun from Deepstone Crypt,
commemoration.
I cleared that sucker out. It has subsistence and something else that's really good that I can't remember. But essentially it just shredded the tormentors from a distance, and then I used a glaive, the Judgment of Chelchis, and wait, no, Doom of Chelchis is the other thing.
That's
Judgment
the
of
Scout.
Judgment of Kelgaroth.
Kelgaroth, that's it. So I used that for my other option, and just absolutely destroyed everything. So I won, and it was victory, and then I got the Strand exotic pants for the Titan. Yeah. And I just found out today that the feet glow. So when you're running, the soles of your feet light up, and I was just so happy because I love glowing items on exotics, and it's apparently a really stupid good exotic. So
I would recommend watch videos so you can immediately do the build. Because right now you can start like building out the currency. That I want to go through. I didn't watch it because I didn't want to get sad about not being able to use any of it. I followed like a Destiny builder on Twitter that has a couple of things that I want to plunder booty or something like that. Plunder booty or something like that, because I know he does like a really good builds all the time.
Yeah, he does.
And Dado does them like easy, like has the 14-minute like quick video of like I do this and use this and this.
Destiny Build Hub. It's just a list of the exotics preferred, the artifacts, and notable mods. And then it just has a picture of like what it looks like and how to get it and what the aspects are, what's on it. It's just like 3 images, very easy to break down.
So
Paul, I have a few of those.
Paul, real quick, since you finished the Destiny 2 campaign, tell me what happened.
I think the best summary of the Lightfall campaign that I got was somebody said, hey, I have a cutscene of everything important that happened during the Destiny 2 Lightfall campaign, and it was, of course, like 90% of the intro cutscene, and then like the last 30 seconds of after you've beat Callus, where the actual thing happens when the witness gets to the Traveler. And that was it. And I went, okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah, what is the veil?
Yeah, exactly. And we've kind of gone back and forth on this whole thing of what that, like why that was long-term storytelling, but also maybe not the best for, you know, your big flagship expansion mission set.
To be fair, Bungie did also admit that they kind of dropped the ball.
Okay,
like they were like, "Look, guys."
It was the pre-twab from last week, right? The one that was like our reaction to the reaction to Lightfall or something like that.
They were like, "We obviously failed to like portray the story we wanted to portray. So moving forward, we're gonna do better." Which we'll see.
Yeah.
We know that they're giving us a free mission to explain us what the frick the veil is next season.
After dropping everything about it on us at once, and explaining none of it.
Yeah.
It shocks me how when you have that many moving parts and that many people, like that nobody either spoke up or somebody tried to and somebody else above them said, "Shut up, that's dumb." And that like we never got explanations for such simple things, because you know how like whenever you're building something yourself and you're writing something yourself, you think you've got every angle figured out, and then you hand it to somebody and they go, yeah, but what is this thing? And you like realize you've never occurred to you at all to discuss something very simple in your story. And Duncan, you can help me out with this. Edward Hopper's painting, do you remember the details about that? Essentially,
not off the top of my head.
So that's that famous thing where it's like a 50s diner at night and there's like a guy sitting in it, and somebody comes up to him and is like, "Don't you think it's so interesting that you decided to not include a front door for that diner? And like why you think it's so profound because of this, that, and the other." And Edward Hopper's just like, "Damn it, son of a..." Like he was so pissed off because he forgot to just draw a door. And so it's that kind of concept where the Bungie people wrote up this whole great thing and then forgot, oh shoot, we forgot to explain why this is important.
So that's kind of the crazy thing though, is that like they touch upon it a lot in the post-campaign missions of like what the veil is speculated to be and like all this other stuff. The problem
the Black Garden, like a connection to like the vanilla Black Garden from like way back when.
Yeah, the Black Heart from way back in the day. And like they drop all of these hints and suggestions, and then immediately go, "But we'll tell you more later."
It's like it's still, now that we've removed like almost 2 months since we beat it, it's like that's still like flabbergasting, especially how much there's some really cool story after the campaign. Try to do the Nimbus quest, Paul. That gives you the machine gun that has both volatile and weekend together.
I just saw it pop up. Yes, thank you. Is it a long mission?
Not really, but it takes you to the Garden of Salvation raid, like in reverse, and has some really cool story for Nimbus. How they like react to the death of Rohan and all that, because that weapon was Rohan's. So because Nimbus was like the most like hated character from that campaign, like everyone hated like his. I didn't mind that. I thought he was like had that cool surfer, like, "Hey dude, what up?" kind of vibe. But so many people really hated him. Well, them.
Yeah, Nimbus is definitely portrayed as kind of like a naive kind of character who this is their first time really being mantled with responsibility.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were way too hard on Nimbus because for part of it I didn't have audio for the earlier parts of the campaign,
and then the thing is that those were the worst parts. The early
so
parts.
Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know if I even want to revisit some of those early missions because it's going to remind me of how really tentative a lot of that early stuff was, sitting in an Airbnb with crappy internet, which it wasn't even that bad, honestly.
I tell you, it's like run it again and pay attention with the alternate characters. Strand is such a cool power to have on all 3 characters, and much easier to unlock than.
And you have to play the campaign with all 3 to get Strand, don't you?
Yeah, though you could pay, but don't pay. There's some people that pay to skip the campaign. It's like, no, don't.
Also,
do that.
the campaign on regular mode is really easy.
Yeah.
Real
Even if you
easy.
have a decent build, there's only 1 or 2 spots in the campaign that I actually had issues with. One of which was
circular room.
I think it was related, yes.
Yeah, with the laser going through.
And I was like, why is this messing me up so much? Some parts were I didn't even pass into it, but I guess the kill box was wider than the actual beam, and that would kill me anyway. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with that. But yeah, I want to go through it with my Warlock and do that to kind of round myself out a little bit more this year.
Really good.
Yeah,
that's what I've been hearing.
Is really good.
No, it's I don't take it off. That's what's so funny, because we sometimes run a couple of Warlocks for the raid, but I'm always the one that I'm like, Mano, time to put your solar.
Well on, bud.
Yeah. Because I'm the one that I'm the DPS.
Ranked.
Yeah, no, because I'm the DPS king with that thing because I know how to do a lot of damage. That's why. So
you're gonna have to tell me what your build is for that, because
very easy.
I realize
very easy.
How easy is it to get the currency to unlock all the Strand aspects?
Just play around New Muna. Do patrols, do bounties.
Do you have to do Neomuna?
It has to be New Muna, yeah.
Okay.
Well, so you get 200 from Nimbus every week per character that hasn't completed everything. And then you get a bunch of them from doing quests though. So as you kind of play through the quests post game, they'll give you 500 there, 200 here. Otherwise it's just kill stuff with Strand, and it's very slow.
Yeah. But much better than the stasis process.
Oh god, it's so much easier than stasis.
I convinced myself I don't think I'm ever going to actually unlock hardly anything with stasis until they just get rid of all of that process and say, hey, here it is like everything else. Well, it's nice having
and the Strand is just so much better. Duncan, do you want to say anything about Command and Conquer 3? I see that's your other game there.
Oh, I've just been playing it a crap load.
Yeah.
I've decided I felt like hating myself, so I've been playing it on hard. And that game is really hard on hard.
I'm shocked to find out that I actually played a Command and Conquer game on the PS1 and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, the very first one was on N64 and PS1. It played like garbage.
Yeah, it was hard, but there was something about it that looked really cool. And I was like, I don't understand anything about this because I'm 6, but this is really cool looking. I would love to try this.
And back then, that would look cool because PS1 actually looked cool for feeble brains back in the day.
Because I mean, all the actual stuff was pixel art, but of course, the cutscenes were live action.
Yeah, they were FMVs.
It was weird, going back to meet. Was it Tesla or?
Yeah, was it pixel art like Diablo 2, original Diablo 2 style?
Sort of. It's
righty.
It's 16-bit.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Instead of
it's all
32.
vehicles and stuff.
And the guys are these little it's just a top and a bottom and there's a wiggle when they walk. It's beautiful.
It's really rudimentary, but there's a charm to that for sure.
Yeah. And Duncan, so this is one of the few games that you're able to play on your PC that's not Destiny.
Yeah.
You told me yesterday.
So this was a conversation I had with Alejandro the other day, and it basically he was like, well, why don't how many games did you play last year? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's check. It was 14.
Yeah, 14 games.
For the entirety of 2022, I played 14 games.
And only like 5 of them 2022 games, I think it was.
Yeah, only 5 of them came out in 2022. Like, so I was like, you know what? I should really play more games. Yeah. So
tell him the solution you've come to. You told me yesterday.
So my solution was throw money at the problem. So I'm gonna buy a Steam Deck so I don't play games, because you can't play Destiny at all on the Steam Deck.
Oh yeah.
So he has to take the drug addiction like I
have to go somewhere else. But no, once it comes in, I'm gonna pick up Octopath Traveler 2.
Mm-hmm. Which I've been hearing so many great things about.
Oh god, I
really
love that.
great things.
The first one.
So that will be like a really great one for you when you get that. So I'm debating a Steam Deck because I have my brother has my Steam account. I gave it to him because he has the PC and he's just been amassing the library, like such a big library, because he actually buys codes from like a weird place that sells like games for like $3. The actual
like
full things. Yeah, that one. So that's why I'm like, man, eventually, because you can play a bunch of stuff in the Steam Deck without it being verified. There is no guarantee it will work flawlessly, but I have heard that many people try those games and they somehow end up working still. So
yeah, there are very few games that are in the Steam library that just don't work at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually one. Yeah, but it's usually like the developer has to go through and mark the game as unplayable, but like because like it won't launch at all. Like Steam will be like, "Hey, you can't download that game. You can't play it." Tough titties.
Yeah. Which one do you buy from the Steam Deck, Duncan? Like,
I bought the 250, the middle one.
Oh, okay. How much is that one?
Like 5 something.
Ooh, so it's still slightly pricey, like give and take. So
yeah, like it's not ideally priced, but it's not like terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was $529.
Yeah, and then the higher end is like $649 if I remember.
$650, yeah.
Yeah. Someday they might get cheap, and then when it gets cheap enough, I'm like, yeah. It's like I remember seeing people like playing Jedi Fallen Order on it. I was like, ooh, that's cool. The idea of being able to play that full game like on the go, and even things like Spider-Man and God of War 2018 that got Steam releases and work there. Obviously, right now they're trying to make The Last of Us work on Steam Deck, but they just have to get that game working in PCs in general.
They have other problems with that game.
Just a few issues, a couple minor fixes they got.
Just a couple minor bugs. That's all.
Yeah. After we're done recording, I'm gonna send you a video that someone like shared of the scene where they meet Ellie and everyone's like just dripping wet. Like the character like dripping
like as they're panning back and forth, like they just get progressively wetter.
Yeah, in that scene.
It's like a mix of Airplane and was it Super Troopers, where they had that one chick that had the hat that kept getting progressively bigger.
Yeah.
Oh man, visual comedy.
Yeah, I tell you, like that Last of Us PC remake is like they still haven't fixed it. Like the comedy of errors just keeps on growing since we talked about it in the show. So as for me, like for what I played real quick, obviously I did try the God of War Ragnarok New Game Plus. I played less than you. I was like, yes, it's cool that I had this. I need to finish Hogwarts. So I was like, I went to finally finish Hogwarts Legacy. So 35 hours later, I'm finally done with that game. I already said my piece in our chat poll, but just real quick, because I really enjoyed it more than you and our buddy Sebastian did. I wonder if that is because I wasn't a hardcore Potter fan, but I
have a quick question. How did you feel about like the non-starter of an ending?
It was dumb, but in a fun way. Like I liked it because I was like, oh cool, a dragon. So instead of because I was thinking, I was like, would I feel cool if like I was just literally magic fighting a freaking dwarf or whatever, or goblin, whatever it was. So it got like I felt the fight was cool and epic, obviously conceptually dumb, but again it was like I don't have like a really appreciation, or let's just say that I don't really care about Harry Potter like as a concept too much to let that bother me. I just love how they portray like something that I remember watching in the movies and recognizing so much of that going through Hogwarts and all of that. I understand though, like if you were hardcore Potter, it did feel weird me knowing at least the whole Avada Kedavra thing, that I was using it next to like the professors and they didn't even bat an eye when you're like going through the cave and finishing off that. There's like that I'm like, yeah, that feels weird because that even me, I know that you use that. It's like you're punished forever. And there's the big Sebastian like quest, side quest of the Dark Arts that makes a big deal. That makes a big deal about it. So it was so funny that it was like in story, they were like trying to hit like things that I remember from the movies, but in gameplay that didn't like quite compute. So I could see that being a problem. But let's see what they do with a sequel. I mean, that thing sold a lot, so I enjoyed it. But I definitely like. I think I'm gonna put it around the same spot that we put it so far, Paul, with like everything else we played. Resident Evil 4 is definitely much better.
At the bottom of everything that's kind of come out, outside of like the few that really stuck it out, like Atomic Heart and Forspoken being at the automatic bottom of our list so far.
and Duncan finished Atomic Heart. He's the one that convinced me to not
beat that game. And it's okay.
Yeah. I figured. I wasn't enjoying it anyway, so hearing that I was like, okay. This was already a miss for me. And after I finished Hogwarts, I said that I wanted to finish Jedi Fallen Order before Survivor. So I actually, just before this recording, I both beat and platinum the game again. That's my second time doing it in PS4 in like 2 days.
How easily he says that, because Jedi Fallen Order is such a difficult game to platinum, and you even mentioned it, but you're like, yeah, so no big deal, but I'm already at the Vader boss fight over here. Like, you started that like 2 days ago, bro.
Yeah, to be fair, I was already...
Not only did you beat it, but you platinumed it.
Yeah, to be fair, I picked up a save. I didn't start from like the very beginning. I picked it up through the second visit at Cepho, so I was already technically halfway through.
Okay, so yeah, you were much further in than I was thinking. I thought you'd started blind, started from the actual beginning, and then somehow platinumed everything.
Yeah, because I because I platinumed before. It's like I know where a bunch of the collectibles are. I know like what they require you. It's like there's like a trophy where you have to get 100 perfect evades. So I just went to the abandoned village at Cepho, waited one of the trader guys to come in, and I was just like doing the Matrix stuff for like a good minute, and boom, the thing popped. There's like another trophy where you have to do like hold the enemies, and then the more you hold the R1 or whatever key it is on PC, because I know you like on PC that you do the thing that you put forwards to like slow, and then you have to kill 25 of those. There's another trophy where like one of those like horses, you have to let one of them kick you, and then you kick it back. Like let him kick you, and then go ahead and do the kick thing, which is like dodge attack, and then that gives you trophies. Like very easy trophies. The very annoying ones are the exploration ones. The having to like find all the BD1 scanning, so here's some lore here, or scan the enemies. Scan the enemies because I knew that was gonna happen, because I didn't do that on PS4, so that was a pain having to go through the entire world scanning every enemy I beat. This time I did it as I went, and I was like, okay, cool. When I see Vader, it's gonna pop me a trophy, and boom, there it was. There was one that you have to find the Endo Cordova or whatever the Jedi that you're like kind of like
Cordova.
Yeah, so because there's like something called the data disk from BD1 that you keep like journaling like all like his findings, and I had all of them except one that I was already in Bogano like near the end, and then I looked up, I was like, wait a second, I thought you should have popped your trophy, and then looked it up, I was like, crap, I'm missing one that's all the way in one of those temples. So I had to fly back into Cepho, and Cepho is the worst planet, like in layout, especially for a game with like no fast travel. It's such an annoyance. Like now I have to go all the way to the other side of the map, and what is the most optimal way? And then I pull up the map, and the map is like all crisscross. I was like, is this the fast way to do it? Is this not? I was like, that sucks. But if you were not a completionist, that wouldn't be a problem. It's just me that I'm a completionist. Those are like the problems that pop up. Like it's kind of like what happened to me with God of War Ragnarok last year. That had I just like played that game like mainline, not worried about like completionists, I wouldn't have run into the problems of the map, the compass, and all that. Like what happened to you, Paul, when you were trying to go back to the crater, when I told you, follow the dog, because if not, you're going to be lost. And lo and behold, you were lost for much longer. So it feels like those games, when they're trying to give you value, their weaknesses are exposed more than if you were just playing them. But after finishing Fallen Order, I feel this is one of those 7 out of 10 games that I love like a 10. It's like, I know it has its problems though. I send you so many clips. Like there was this glitch that was like driving me nuts in the later half of this game, where the lip sync and the cutscenes was all off.
Yeah, that was really messed up. That was worse than the Modern Warfare 2019
PS5. Yeah. Yeah, because it was like the lips would like start moving, and then 3 seconds later the dialogue would play. And I found out what was the problem. I had this game installed on my M2 SSD that I installed.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like the games work, but there are gonna be a few games that maybe are not optimized to like run fully like on an SSD that's not the PS5's ones.
Yeah.
So, but
that
usually,
makes sense. I guess you almost need to like transfer over into the actual SSD what you're going to play, and then it almost becomes the same issue where it's like, well, do you just have a regular hard drive and you have to transfer it over whenever you're ready to play it?
But it's much better because transferring from the SSD's PS5 to the SSD that you install is in seconds. Literal seconds. Yeah.
Okay. That's much better.
That's one huge advantage the PlayStation 5 has over everybody's direct storage.
The transfers are like so quick. So damn quick. And even the console recommends is like, if the game is like having some weird like behavior on the SSD you installed, move it over to like to the internal one. I thought I had it in internal, but then I went to check. I was like, oh, it was in my M2. That makes sense. But again, it's like that's something that can be put real quick, and the rest of the game worked, except on that elevator that I showed you that I was going through a temple, and like there was like a massive thing clipping in the middle. So it was like
the elevator activated and you didn't move with it, so you just sat there while the elevator rose around you. That was weird.
Yeah,
man. I've got a couple of glitches that I want to post now that I have internet again, and there's gonna be some good ones, I tell you.
Yeah, but I tell you, it's like that's what my big hopes are for Survivor. That they had the time now, they have the money. I learned through an interview that this game was like done real quick because they spent so much of the time convincing Lucasfilm to allow them to use Jedi, and they had like a tight deadline. So because they were no, why don't you do a third-person shooter instead? And the director Stig Asmussen was like, I worked in God of War. I'm like, my expertise is melee. Let me show you. Like, let me prove it to you that we're gonna do it right. And they worked on concept for like 2 years to finally show them, no, it's like, we're gonna treat the property right. Because apparently when it comes to Jedi, the Lucasfilm, the story group is like very protective of it. They don't want to just like let everyone do Jedi stuff. So they convinced them, it's like, no, we can do it. And then it was the story group that allowed them to do Order 66 adjacent storytelling.
That makes me want to know which of those goofballs tried to make a game around Jedi that was so bad that they just said, we're never going to let people touch this again.
Yeah, it makes me wonder too that they were like so protective of the idea. So, and it's so funny, they wanted a third-person shooter, and that hasn't happened in Star Wars during the Disney era still. Like, we lost 2 third-person shooters, 1313 and Project Ragtag. And that sucks.
Because, I try not to think about it, but I think about it daily.
Yeah. Hey, we might get Ragtag again now that Amy Hennig is working at Skydance. And she said that she was...
man. She hasn't made anything at this point because nobody lets her play anything or make anything. I don't know. Maybe she's cursed at this point. I'm worried, but
yeah, we need to wait for her to finish her Captain America and Black Panther World War II game. Holy fuck. Yeah. I like just smacked my finger on my table. Oh god. Yeah, that was perfect timing. But enough of that, Paul. We got a few things to talk about today, so press X.
Yes, we do. For some news.
So, Paul, our first story is not really a story; it's more like our reactions to. Oh, look at those blue eyes!
When I tell y'all, today's been a good day for trailers and gameplay. Man,
yeah.
It
started in the morning.
Do we want to just jump into both at the same time, or just
that's
like chronologically? I guess. So let's start with Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom having its 3rd trailer coming out, and this is the thing that like we should have seen. Like I told you, Alejandro,
from the very beginning.
I think either from the beginning or before, like the deep dive on gameplay.
Which wasn't much of a deep dive. It was just kind of like just scratching the surface.
Well, just like explained what's going to even be possible. And like I understand it, I respect it, but that wasn't what I was looking for after everything else that had been coming out for Tears of the Kingdom, especially for I think that one trailer that had mostly cutscenes and then ending with like 2 seconds of gameplay of just a random like Link on the little hover ship for a second, and then it's like Tears of the Kingdom, and I was like,
so that one
where's
happened.
The rest of the gameplay?
So that one happened. If just to kind of remind you, Paul, that was the trailer that was revealed when we were expecting that we were gonna get Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. When we woke up very early in the morning.
That's right.
And then we were like so salty we didn't get that then that trailer played and we got the title reveal the same week of the death of Queen Elizabeth. So that's why it was so funny that the UK didn't stream that thing, because they were on Queen Elizabeth mourning at the time. But that didn't register. And then obviously
even in hindsight, I'm looking back on that specific not commercial trailer, what am I saying? And I'm wondering like what they actually revealed out of that was unique, because besides like
just the
it was all stuff that we'd already kind of knew about the storyline and had guessed about the storyline, but didn't really reveal anything more. And then of course the only gameplay that was shown was that last 3 seconds of like a quick pan, and that was it. And I was like, this is nothing about what I'm expecting out of the Legend of Zelda game. What is going on here? Yeah,
we were having our talk with our buddy Sebastian also in our private chat with him, that at least how they were showing it, at least for him, he wasn't seeing what was justifying this as a more expensive sequel to the other one. He wasn't seeing like the advancements. Like, I saw the potential with the fuse mechanic when we saw the gameplay, just thinking the 6 years we've lived with Breath of the Wild, many people saying they break that game, but not really breaking, it's just playing with like the tools that they've been given to do a bunch of crazy stuff, and on Nintendo basically giving them the keys of the kingdom basically, and all the weird thing that could potentially happen. We know that. So
keys of the kingdom.
I mean, I'm expecting a lot of like penises. Let's just say like a lot of that.
There could be so many dicks.
I mean, like I said once before, we saw it once in Banjo-Kazooie on the 360.
Yeah, but nuts and bolts.
It's just like, you just have to accept that it's going to be a thing and then just work forward with that. I guess clearly they're going to acknowledge it, because we're going to see that one way or another.
Yeah.
All sorts of screenshots in front of NPCs and things. It's just going to be the worst.
Yeah, but the trailer though for today.
But yes, coming back to
holy crap
with that.
Holy crap! It was like the scale of the amount of things that they showed, giving me a tease of what looks like the actual return of dungeons, like actual elaborate dungeons. It seems like there's gonna be more in your face story than we had before, which was, oh yeah, if you want story, find the memories that are all scattered around the world, and you can piece it together if you
Dark Souls did.
Yeah, they Dark Souls did, yeah. But the return of Ganondorf, like actual Ganondorf,
Calamity Ganon, real Ganondorf.
Boy, looking good, the best he's ever looked, I think. Because I mean, we didn't really even have many options, like you said, Alejandro, when you posted that one article where it's like he's only been in 4 games really. Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time,
and now this one,
and that's it. And I feel like this is like, well, okay, so non-canon, he's also been in Hyrule Warriors, the first one.
Yeah.
But anyway, also, I still think that might actually be the best he's ever looked, but don't tell anyone.
No, a lot of the character models in Hyrule Warriors are like, they rock, because it's like the evolved art style of Twilight Princess in actual HD. So
yeah. So anyway, on an actual topic, so yeah, Ganondorf looks freaking awesome. I cannot wait for that whole thing. I cannot wait for the present focus. I'm really glad that they're focusing on like the survivors of Hyrule, where it's like Link is riding his horse, pulling a carriage full of like regular townspeople. There's missions where it looks like he's defending them and like working alongside the Hyrule guards. Like it's very clearly
the champions, like the champions of Hyrule that are kind of like following through the ones that got sacrificed back in like the Calamity era and fighting alongside you.
Yeah. I'm really glad that they're continuing to be like, yeah, these people are still important because they were chosen, and they're going to continue like being big chosen one people, and that you can fight alongside them now. It's making the world feel more lived in than I think Breath of the Wild did.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild
was like
bacon.
Breath of the Wild was more like a sandbox.
Yeah, it was like lived in with an emphasis on the ED part of live. So it's like there was once people,
The
but
past,
there ain't
the past.
no one left.
Yeah.
Yeah, very past tense.
Yeah,
But
we had to
even
play
then, we got glimpses.
we had to play Age of Calamity to see what the world looked like actually populated.
Oh
So-
gosh, I
And that
hope
was
we're
a
not
good
gonna.
game.
We're gonna get the Mandalorian season 3 treatment where they're like, "Oh, you want to know what happened here? Go play Age of Calamity."
Oh yeah, the freaking Book of Boba
yeah,
Fett.
no.
But
At least they very clearly said that Age of Calamity diverged in its storytelling, so it's not going to actually bear anything on what's going on with this.
no, it's not required reading basically, like what they
Yeah.
did with that one.
I don't even think it's canon anymore based on what they've been doing, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know. It's above my pay grade.
Duncan, what do you think of the trailer?
I mean, okay, so personally, Zelda's always kind of been an overhyped game in my opinion. Like, they're not bad games. They're very well designed, they're fun to play. But to me, they've always been like given way too much credit.
I don't disagree with that, especially with the last few.
Yeah.
I've gone on record many times in this show that
Oh yes.
how much Breath of the Wild has been told the greatest game of all time. I'm like, screw you. It's like
Yeah.
I appreciate like the things that it did really well. I mean, we're seeing the influences in like Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those things are like, it was a trendsetter and I give it that. But greatest game of all time, I can't give it that. Like I just can't. Looking at this trailer now, it's that I'm now seeing, like, because I always said Breath of the Wild, amazing open world, not a great Zelda game. For like what I used to like, I feel like the actual praise given to Ocarina of Time, the game that set the template for 3D action adventure like forever ago, that is one that I always give the credit to. The other ones were cooler, but it was like the actual trendsetter was Ocarina of Time. Breath of the Wild was half a trendsetter for me. It was like in open worlds, it's like they made them more interesting than just checklists. But to me, like Zelda is more just, and that is like I remember their stories so well. It was like so many amazing moments, like authored moments that were just not there in Breath of the Wild because they made it a sandbox. They were like, no, now you make the moments. And
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, I've seen the cool moments from videos. I'm not that creative. I'm not gonna make, like, the most creative thing I can do is, like, I see a bokoblin, like, camp there, and I see a rock, and I see they have a fire barrels, or I'm just gonna push the rock, let it, like, let the rocks hit them and explode, and then just move on. That's as creative as I could get with that game. I know other people were, but that's just not how my brain works. So a lot of like my memories of that game were a little bit more vacant. It was like I enjoyed like sometimes seeing dragons like pop out of nowhere whilst I was exploding. Those were like really cool visuals, or seeing the divine beasts like in the 4 different corners of the world, like very far away, and the game never like loaded, like with no loading you can like get closer and see like the majesty. It was like the feeling I love from a game like Shadow of the Colossus being put there, but then the rest of that game was like so unmemorable to me. This trailer for today, I was like, if they can keep like what the promise of how like malleable the fusion mechanic will be and all of that, but now they're actually tell like a truly memorable story, I can buy the hype now. Like I can buy the hype a little bit more. But I'm also bracing that people may also give this another greatest game of all time kind of thing, and then I'll find some annoyances and be kind of like the outlier, but who cares?
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, but
I think it's like, despite how good it was, there's still another game that I'm more hyped about than all of that. And I know we're not going to get into it just yet because I still feel like we have a couple things to say about Tears of the Kingdom, but
I feel like I would say this, like one of my favorite things from that trailer was when it feels like you're gonna fight a dragon like on the sky from like where it looks like there's like a calamity happen and a fight in the air. I was like, that is so cool. Like
with
those
like
are
flying ship in a tornado. That's like the kind of weird epic mythology stuff that you would see in. I like to say that it's the stuff that you see in Legend of Zelda and Elden Ring, or like Dark Souls before it, where it's like you talk about something and the way you describe it sounds like you're summarizing a Greek myth. Where you're like, yeah, I remember that one time you found like you went into a tornado and you got caught up in it and you found a flying ship inside the tornado and then you fought pirates on the tornado, or anything that happened in Elden Ring with the way that game played out. But that's one thing that I really liked about Breath of the Wild, where it's like you would be genuinely shocked at some of the things you'd find just by wandering around, where like the weird island where you had no equipment or the
Eventide
crazy
Island.
island that was a labyrinth. You had like the crazy, I mean, it's not flying, but the weird spirals and weird deformations. The fact that there's a hole in the mountain from a presumed laser, and you're like, what the crap happened here? Or the first time you saw the dragons fly up over like a mountain range and you just sat there shocked before one of their little lightning balls hit you. Because you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a tiny part of this world.
Yeah.
Rather
It had a great sense of
something
adventure.
big.
It was like, it brought back sense of adventure into open world games that, especially the Ubisoft kind that loves telling you literally everything. Where you will be able to find everything in a certain spot, like just go to the check marks. And like that was a great repudiation of that end. Both that and Elden Ring showing that people are hungry for games that respect them as players. It's like, hey, no, we're giving you the tools for you to like have your own agency to find this stuff. But we're also designing the game so well that it feels like we're also signposting you. That's kind of like the big magic of playing an open world like Elden Ring, and then like eliminating all signposting from like Horizon Forbidden West or even Assassin's Creed Valhalla. They give you the option to play them like HUD-less. Those games are unplayable without HUD. Like because their worlds are not the worlds are not organically designed to catch your eye and promote exploration. They rely a lot on the signposting within maps. And I'm just hoping that we keep going through that, but not like become like super obtuse games. Also, I feel we can find like a perfect meter, like a perfect
it's a
middle.
really difficult balance between trusting your audience to understand the signposting you're making and actually what most people are going to do, because they're not going to be 100% engaged at any time. They're always going to be taken up by something in the world around them that's going to make them miss a signpost, and then they say, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me blah 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 blah, and then it becomes the yellow barrel problem all over again.
I was gonna say, like, if you have too many signposts, it's the yellow barrel problem or the yellow paint problem. If you don't have enough, it's people complaining that, like, how did I miss this secret that's directly in front of me?
Right. I am sometimes in that camp, because sometimes my brain is just not exactly where it needs to be to notice the detail on something that, like, my logic brain goes a different direction. So sometimes I really like the extra signposts, but at the same time, for something like Elden Ring, where there's just so much, it doesn't matter if you miss a signpost or two. And same thing with Breath of the Wild, there's just different things about it.
That's the thing, is like Elden Ring has more signposts than the people give it credit for.
It really does.
Yeah, like the sites of grace lasers that point you towards like the next boss. Finding the statues finding the little like curved statues that if you activate them.
Oh, the catacomb statues that tell you what direction they're in.
Exactly. It's like it tells you direction. It just doesn't tell you to go here. It just points. It's just like, no, go over there. But
and then for me, it was like, even if I missed somehow the catacomb, I would find something else that would keep me happy anyway.
Yeah.
So
it was so funny. It was so funny those early days with Elden Ring, that because you were very ahead of me, because I was still playing Horizon and other stuff, and when I went on my Dark Souls 1 tangent also, that you were like so like
you went and played through all of Dark Souls 1 instead of playing and continuing Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the play the game we agreed on meme came from for us, because I just kept like, just come play the game that we agreed to play together. Yeah. I'm having the time of my life. Jump in, dude. I'm gonna go play Dark Souls 1 again. No,
because that's what was so funny. It was like, that literally was just me just curious how it would feel now that I had clicked with Elden Ring. And then I was like, oh, now I click with Dark Souls. And I just kept playing and I kept playing and I kept playing. I was like, crap, like I'm really enjoying this one right now, and I never finished it. I was like, I know technically it's shorter than Elden Ring, so I'll finish it, not knowing that it was like a 60-80 hour game also. So, that it just never ended. But and like,
so the
I still have
this. Is you can beat that game in 5 hours.
What?
You can beat Dark Souls 1 in 5 hours.
I believe it now.
Yeah.
Because of certain things that you can do, I'm sure, even without exploits, because there's just like a certain route you can take, isn't it?
Yeah, there is. It's just you can beat it in about 5 hours if you play it legit. It's crazy. I think exploits can beat it in like 10 minutes.
I can imagine that one. I can imagine. It's like those games are designed to like be exploited. That's kind of like what I learned. That is like you never feel like bad about like feeling like you're exploiting it. It's like the game is giving you the tools to exploit it.
I mean, the game also cheats.
Yeah, exactly, because it's
Yeah.
like it's like a back and forth thing, like freaking Pontiff Sullivan and his like summon. That's where that to me that's where mimic. I figured that's where the mimic tier idea kind of came from, because he fights you with his own mimic tier.
He does.
Man. And Paul, how many times did I said I'm quitting, I'm done with this game, and came back like 5 minutes later? That was also a meme.
Constantly. I was just every time you were like, F this game, I'm so pissed off at this. And I was like, where are you at now, buddy? And it was just like a constant back and forth. And then in like an hour or something, you're like, I beat it.
I know.
And you're like, I'm going to keep playing this game. And you would just get like just enough like ability. Of momentum once you beat something finally, and you're like, okay, fine. And because everything right after you beat a boss is stupid easy. I don't know if they make it that way or you're just like on top of your game whenever that happens.
Probably both.
It's a little both.
Yeah, but then you just go through an entire like extra zone and you're like caught back up in the atmosphere of it all again, and then you're just like, oh shoot, it's been 3 hours. I thought I was gonna quit.
Yeah, to me, like, just figuring out that after beating whatchamacallit, Pontiff Sullivan, it was like I was in Arn Orlando again. When initially I was like, this looks like Arn Orlando. And then I climbed up the elevator and I saw this stuff. I was like, wait, is that it? And this movie, and then they Arn Orlando.
Arn Orlando.
Exactly. So I was like, oh, okay.
That was a really good return. I remember that moment when I came out and I was just so happy to be in that wintry area, which I think isn't that where all the PvP would happen as well, like right outside
in
that
Dark Souls
zone?
3 the PvP was in the swamp, if I remember.
A majority of the there's a landing right side of Pontiff Sullivan's
like
arena.
that circular area. Okay,
It's
that's
right,
what I'm thinking.
it's right before the first bonfire of Anne Orlando.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I remembered that whole zone really well, and then walking up to it and then just being like, oh, because Anne Orlando, I think, was probably my favorite area.
Such a strike. It was even me playing it later. Such a striking imagery getting there when you do in that game. After one of the hardest castles with like with the serpent head stupid idiot. Like, what's the place called? Do you remember? It was like
Sen's Fortress.
Yeah, Sen's
Fortress.
Sen's Funhouse.
Yeah.
As some people called it.
Yeah, Sen's Funhouse of boppers and snake boys.
Yeah, it's so funny that our buddy Zach, he's like replaying Dark Souls over and over. It's so funny, like our buddy, because he was like the guy that made a lot of our art, Duncan. Like when we were playing Elden Ring and Dark Souls, he was just like an observer last year, and now he's played through literally every Souls game except Sekiro. Sekiro broke him.
I mean, Sekiro is the least Souls-like.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of like learned lessons that are just blatantly wrong for Sekiro that you need to do the opposite of, and unless you have like the self-awareness to realize that, most people are just not going to vibe with it.
No.
But anyway,
I just like that Jedi Fallen Order is Sekiro easy mode, because it's so funny that both those games came out the same year with almost the same kind of idea for like pairing. But obviously, like,
I would love to see somebody going through the gauntlet of Jedi Fallen Order, Kena Bridge of Spirits, and then playing Sekiro.
Oh god, especially Kena Bridge of Spirits has literally the worst pairing system of any modern game. Like the window for pairing on that game is
stupid inconsistent.
Yeah. So,
but,
and how much you realize the last boss is for you to parry. That's the worst part. That it feels like if you're not parrying, like you're not doing it right, and you're just not gonna survive.
At the same time, though, such a
great
lovely game.
Yeah, it's now available on PS Plus Extra for people that haven't played it. Well, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming.
Go play Kena Bridge of Spirits. That game is like a Pixar game. It's so wonderful.
But since we like tangented so much after Tears of the Kingdom, so I'm excited. I'll say this: like, it's so funny. I started this year with like mild excitement. It was like I'm gonna play because it's Zelda. To okay, I'm seeing like if they nail the mechanics that they're introducing, that could be like really cool if it works. Like manipulating things, and then seeing this trailer, I'm like, God damn it, Nintendo, you got me. Now I'm super excited for this.
It is going to be wild going from Jedi Survivor to Tears of the Kingdom and then into our next segment, which is Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah. The dedicated state of play happened literally a few minutes before we started recording. And that was such a deep dive. And Duncan, you know how much Paul is a big fan of like Devil May Cry, right?
Oh yes.
I've never seen a game more like tailor made for him. Like it was like a good 5-7 minutes of just showing us endless combos.
Fighting styles, different what are they, eidolons?
Icons.
Icons,
yeah, they're icons in this one.
So funny that I've never actually heard how they're pronounced. So I always called them like Akon, like
so
the singer.
If you played a lot of Final Fantasy 14,
that would explain it.
Yeah, they're referred to as Icons or icons.
That explains a lot, actually. Golly, so I'll just start it off because before
you start off, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
This is the kind of game I wish was available to me when I rewatched Game of Thrones last year and then watched House of the Dragon. Holy crap! Like that aesthetic was like speaking to me so much, and then seeing like all the crazy crap. Go, you have the floor. You have the floor.
Yeah, okay, here we go. So, man, that just makes me think that I want like a parody redo of Game of Thrones, except all of the really bonkers, weird Final Fantasy stuff is in it, but everything else from Game of Thrones is. Anyway, so yeah, if they distilled all of my interests into like one game, aesthetically at least, and in theory, since it's not released yet, it seems like this would be that game, because it's all of the extra fat trimmed off of a lot of like the Final Fantasy, the RPG side of it, which I do love. Don't get me wrong.
And a lot of it is still there, with a lot of like skill tree,
yes.
and like and gear and gear statting and all that. That's like so inherent to like to build crafting in Final Fantasy. So
I think it gets me to the idea that what draws a lot of people initially to a fighting game, but then what makes them drop off. And with all that debate, you really hear the same things where it's like, this looks really cool, this is really fun to play, but there's no like explanations, there's no single player content, or there's like zero gap. I mean, there's a huge gap between joining the game and where it actually is competitively. What I love is when single player games kind of like make you feel like you're playing a fighting game in a way, but it's tailor-made to make you feel like you're capable. That's one reason why I love Devil May Cry, at least in the middle zone of like 3, 4, and 5, where you can kind of feel great, where it doesn't punish you as hard. 3 really did that. 4, I feel like, tamped it down just a tiny amount, and then 5 kind of really let you play around with it and have fun. And I love that idea for somebody to be able to pick up something and mash buttons, but then have so much fun mashing buttons that you want to learn how to do it better and more efficiently. And then all of a sudden, like, that's where it gets you. Because for me, I think that actually clicked in the DMC Devil May Cry game, where I was in the middle of like just mashing stuff, messing around, and then realizing, oh wait, but if I hold this button and then hit this button, I can do this better. And then getting into fighting games itself, coming full circle now, Final Fantasy XVI seems to have distilled all of that idea into a perfect package where you have the no bother with real travel. You can just kind of get to the map, fast travel to where you need to go, and you're in the right zone. You got missions, takes you right where you need to go to fight the monster.
More hubs than just open world, also.
Yeah.
Kind of like what they had promoted.
Right, which doesn't waste your time. It doesn't force the entire game to be loaded in at all times, so it saves on the power that it's going to take. Because then you're just like, you don't have any expectation to have the entire map in front of you. You could just know that, hey, this is that zone. That's all we need, because it's all about the combos, baby. And then let me think. Well, all the other stuff that I watched distilled through my retinas the last like 20 minutes of that. All of the really cool stuff that you can do with those like scripted boss segments that I said to you, Alejandro, that it was very Asura's Wrath. Where it's just like absolute insanity. I mean, Homeboy was transformed,
and the fact that they call it like cinematic strikes as well.
Yeah. And I was like, this is exactly what I want out of this stuff, because it's like, it's really fun to do all of the gameplay stuff. And one of the things that I just really love is when you go really bonkers to show what the character is capable of in a cutscene, as well as like the cool acting stuff. That's one reason why I think God of War really resonates with me, because you get these deep emotional moments, and then you get the bombastic, like Baldur versus Kratos, and like Kratos and Atreus versus the corpse of the giant, and then like the dragon and stuff, where you just getting thrown through an entire universe practically. And you're just like, I'm here for this. This is amazing. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they just created all of these fights for that kind of vibe. Go ahead, Alejandro.
This is a game that I'm gonna play on my big TV. I like playing like a lot of my games inside my room because of AC, air conditioning. But my God, just the scale of those two giants going at it, and how crazy it just kept getting more and more and more. At a certain point, it became like Star Fox a little bit. Like when they're like far ahead, like you were like
whenever
Phoenix.
It was Bahamut and Phoenix fighting.
Yeah, it was like. It's so unabashedly, like I said, Paul, is like, this is the most like anime-ass AAA game that I've seen. like literally.
But like that's not the perfect example of it. The perfect example was whenever Ifrit was like sliding up the tentacle on
that's exactly what I was
Titan,
freaking out.
And like jumping and like throwing fireballs and shit. Like
that was truly like beautiful. Physics do not apply if you are powerful enough. And I love like the lack of explanation for it, where it's just like, no. At a certain point you're like, you're in this zone enough that gravity doesn't work anymore. You're flying, you're doing a backflip as a fire demon deity, and just, oh my gosh, it was so cool.
The icons are gods.
Yeah, they literally are. And it's I love the idea that they took all of the summons, which I always thought were like a little too disconnected from the rest of a Final Fantasy story. That was always like, okay, so we have these weird deities we could summon into a fight,
and they're all the same deities in all these Final Fantasies, the exact same name, the exact same shapes. It's just different games. So they were just kind of like the common thing that kind of linked every entry together. But this is the first time that, because I feel like Leviathan in Final Fantasy 15 was one of the few times that I feel like a summon was a big part of like of the story and both like the lore of the place where it happened. That was my favorite part of 15.
Titan and Leviathan were the only two that really had story bearing. Because like Shiva showed up, Ifrit showed up, and then was it Odin?
Bahamut
was
at the end.
Oh yeah, Bahamut. But which is the one that's the big wizard dude? Ramu. Yeah, he's the one that shows up like sometimes, and that just didn't make any sense. So to tie it into, there are characters who are essentially avatars for that being, and then it seems like you can also like gather the favor
Evangelion
of them
style
to switch into more. Yeah, and I love the idea that you can win favor with this deity and then like almost summon them / turn into them, utilize parts of them, because clearly Clive is using more than just Ifrit in all of that gameplay, where he can utilize the crazy sword of like Shiva, I think.
They
and
said
some
that
of the others.
you can learn techniques from the other dominants.
Okay, that's what I was seeing. Because
like
clearly
not necessarily like not necessarily channeling the icon, but like using techniques that are based off of that icon's power. Because like there are multiple points where like they went into that like quick shot mode, kind of like in Kingdom Hearts.
I saw that. I thought Ramu. That was really funny.
Yeah, that was Ramu. The big claw attacks, like the spinning claw attacks with Garuda.
That makes so much sense. I couldn't figure out which one that was.
The sword was either Odin or Ifrit, because they were both red and it's hard to tell.
Yeah. I know Ifrit was like one of the penultimate bosses on 15, like back then. And it was like the intro that flashes you forward when they're like adults and all the four are like covering from like the fire. That's when like Ifrit happened in that one.
Yeah, right at the end, and you get Bahamut's help to defeat him. Well, actually, you get everyone's help because Shiva helps too.
Yeah,
Shiva and Bahamut.
There's a lot going on with that game.
There's a lot going on in that game.
And a lot of it incoherent.
Showed me the ending of it, and it's just such a wild roller coaster that somehow still makes you feel emotional at the end of it.
That's his biggest achievement.
It's a genuine achievement to make me feel emotion. And it's like, none of this makes sense, but God, I just want them to be friends.
But
Pursue human emotion.
yeah, but this game has so much stuff. Like, do you see like that part where you're like talking with someone and you see like the little sprites happening when you're like learning?
That was
something
adorable. I love that. That reminds me actually, because I love that they just added an entire NPC that gives you lore. Where he's like, all right, you want to come sit here? Here's a tome. Explain the entire socioeconomic details of our Fire Emblem style freaking world. Where it's like,
I appreciate that a lot.
Documentary, like, this army came in to attack this crew in this year. And I was like, I don't know. I almost respect it that they separate it out, but that they give enough, like, trust in that system to even put the work in for it, you know? Where it's like, we know some people are going to really eat this up, so we're going to put work in. We're also going to shove it off to the side, so if that's what you want, you can have it. But if you don't, you could just kind of play the game. Because that kind of ties into my thing where accessibility for so many people, where you have games out there that are so cool, but they're forcing you to be really good, have good reflexes, good motor functions. And at first it was like, oh, you got to have the skill for it, but now it's like
good. Basically.
That was the mentality, obviously. And now we're realizing there's so many people out there that physically can't, but like then it becomes gatekeeping on people who really want to just have a good experience. And I love that they let you, hey, if you don't want to deal with all of this stuff, like this isn't your cup of tea, just pick the story mode. It'll pick like items and attachments and weapons for you. Don't worry about it, just enjoy the story.
There's graphics mode also.
Accessories.
I don't know if you noticed that they like really focused that the game had like the graphics mode, which we know that this game has a performance mode, which is so funny because of what we're gonna talk about later. But they were like just showing us everything. Like there was like no stone unturned. Whether like how we're building Final Fantasy 16,
but that's Yoshi P for you.
That's basically what saved 14. He took a no stone unturned when he like came in to rescue that game with Tabata back when they did a Realm Reborn. So, and Paul, your number one is like you picked this as your number one for this year. And this was my number 6.
I remember y'all were shocked for a second when I finally revealed it, and y'all were like, really? Oh, wow. Like, because, I mean, this is also the year with Tears of the Kingdom that I used to champion so much, and Spider-Man 2, and all of this other stuff. And the fact that I picked the next Final Fantasy game, y'all were like...
I was just surprised that you didn't put Jedi Survivor as number 1, considering just how much...
That was the other one. I almost did.
I'll admit, this trailer definitely sold it to me. Like, because before I was, like, hesitant, because, like, Stranger from Nowhere was pretty cool, or Stranger of Paradise was pretty fun. 14, yeah, I mean, I play that game more than I probably should. Not presently.
Yeah, 14,
yeah.
All 300 like plus hours of it.
Right. 15 was okay.
Yeah. 15
and, like,
is
I'm
like,
glad to see...
it's a bad game that's somehow good.
Right. But I'm really glad to see that, like, that seed that started with the combat of 14 or 15 has now matured and grown into like an actual action combo system.
Yeah.
Yes, they are not like pussyfooting.
Appropriate.
Yeah, they're not pussyfooting of like they were like, no, we want to be action, but we think we need to like keep it like not like a full action game to kind of keep the essence of Final Fantasy. And then Final Fantasy VII Remake was that weird hybrid. It's like a sort of like combo based game, but like a lot of your damage is relying on you pausing the thing to like pick like the big slash.
You still had to like play within the tactical layer.
Yeah,
that
not
was
just
the
like
other thing I really liked. That they have an entire system that lets you do the combos, like the auto combo essentially, and then also pausing time to let you dodge out of the way or counter
the timer.
The timer where it's like press R1 when there's like the circle to show you.
I
when
really
to do
respect
things.
that people are willing to like kind of do that, because you hear so many people complain and try to do the elitism process of like just learn the game, but sometimes you just want to watch the cool stuff happen.
Exactly.
And I just respect that they're trying to do both out of this, but each group that likes it is just going to end up loving the game, and in the end in 5 to 10 years, everyone's going to look back and go, man, Final Fantasy 16 was awesome in theory, but the reason doesn't actually matter as much as the game itself.
Yeah, it feels like they had, like, Square has a legit winner upcoming. Like, if everything, like they have not been shy about been showing a lot of this. Before they did the state of play, there was a 30-minute like gameplay, like raw gameplay that they threw in the internet. I was like, yeah, go see the game, like uncut, go. It's like they haven't been shy. Like, they're not like worried about this one. They're like really flaunting that this game is done. They're like, everything is just like come together for its June 22nd reveals. Like, it's such a far cry of us back in 2006 watching Final Fantasy Versus 13, that original trailer of Noctis coming down the stairs and having to wait 10 years for it because it changed hands, it changed its style, it's like its original intent and all that. And it's so super cool that we knew about this game existing 3 years ago. Now it's here. Like, even though it's been a long time, it's been a while since like the last mainline game. Obviously 7 Remake being put in the middle of that, kind of like models the waters that we haven't really been like Final Fantasy less for a bit. I mean, Stranger of Paradise last year, Paul's chagrin. Oh man, that was the 7th episode, Paul. That's when chaos started.
7th episode.
In the 7th episode
You've
of our
been
show.
Tormenting me with this for like 93 episodes now.
Oh,
86. Man. Well,
huh?
Yeah,
about 86
math
of
is
them.
not my. In 3 episodes, it'll be 93.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just so funny because that episode, that 7th episode was E3 2021, and it's so funny now that E3 is dead. We actually had an E3 show that we covered back in the day, and Stranger of Paradise was the highlight to me of that. Just knowing to me just how much Paul hated it, it just filled me with something.
I don't even care that much about it
not
anymore.
Not anymore, because the game passed. The game was good.
Yeah.
Like, we enjoyed playing it. I beat it. You almost beat it.
Yeah.
It was like
I almost did.
It had all the underpinnings of being a train wreck, and it was surprising that it wasn't. That was what was shocking.
It was refreshing that it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it was somehow in on the joke.
No, I think what made it funnier was that, because the thing is that when I knew Paul hated it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's like he hates it. But then when people played the demo that was like corrupted, when the shadow dropped in, people were like, wait a second, this is actually good. And then I was like, ooh, people are saying it's good, Paul. So that's what started. Yeah, that's where it began. Because had it been as bad as it looked, I wouldn't have cared. It's just because I was hearing that people were enjoying it. I was like, oh man. A war of attrition has started here.
I just love that it's a prequel to Final Fantasy
1,
2, 1, 2.
Yeah, for 1.
Yeah, 1.
Yeah, it's a prequel.
And then it just like justifies like what Final Fantasy 1 becomes. You are the villain. Like, your partners are like the bosses, become the bosses the Warriors of Light flies. It's so funny how that happens. And the ending of Stranger of Paradise is insane. Paul, you have to look. Like, you're not gonna play it. Look up the ending. Just look up the last hour of that game. It's nuts.
I really need to.
Yeah,
it's really crazy.
Yeah, it's like Jack goes off the deep end, like completely. Like, if you thought like he was, just picture like the scene of him trying to punch Skeletor or doing the Liu Kang kick to the blue thing. Like, blow those things to 10. Like, take that energy and he goes completely unhinged with what he's forced to do at the end and what breaks him.
Lord.
Yeah, it's so funny, but that's what's cool about Final Fantasy 16. It's like there's nothing that I look at this that gives me worry. My only worry is that it may not live up to the hype. That's like my only thing, is like, because it looks so good. It looks so cool. And it's cool to feel that way about like a mainline Final Fantasy, because how many people were like hand-wringing all the way until 15 released. Many people didn't even want to believe it was coming out until you started seeing the Stand By Me commercials on TV on November that year. Remember?
Yeah.
So that's when it became real. It's like, crap, it's actually happening. This game is actually gonna come out. So they went from that to this, and Rebirth later this year or later winter, which I think that one can get pushed. I'd be incredibly shocked if Rebirth is in December. I want to believe like Crisis Core made it in December, and it was so good.
Yeah.
So, So yeah. So those are our thoughts of Final Fantasy 16. I was sad that they didn't drop like a final thing, like a demo available today. How cool would that have been?
Oh, that would have been great.
Oh man, that would have been...
I mean, it's clearly fleshed out enough. I mean, you said it was already gold technically.
Yeah,
so
last week.
Make a
last week we read it.
Playable demo. So I'd believe it.
Yeah. So let's fly through a couple funny news. This is interesting. I think all this next few, at least the next two, are news specifically made to be dunked on. Story number 2, officially. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed to 2024. The game will now launch on February 2, 2024. In a statement on Twitter, Rocksteady confirmed the game would be delayed almost an entire year from its planned May date. We have made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work on getting the game to be the best quality experience for players, it reads. Thank you to our amazing community for the continued support, patience, and understanding. There is much more to share in the months ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in Metropolis next year. So, Jason Schreier, he's the one that had broken the news that it was being delayed, because this is the first official confirmation from WB and Rocksteady that this was getting pushed. He broke the news that it was going to be delayed the week after we saw the state of play that was received so poorly. You can listen to the episode me, Paul, and Sebastian did reacting to that thing where we kind of went ham on that one, because it was like, oh man, it was just not good. Now that we knew what it was, but I don't believe, personally, they say this is for polish. I don't believe for a second this entire year delay is just for polish.
So I have a sneaking suspicion that what we saw is all they had.
That'd be insane after 8 years if that's all they had.
But it would be, right? But it also would make sense that basically they're having to rush to finish what's there.
Yeah.
Because I the more I've been thinking about it, the more I've actually kind of agree with your your conspiracy about this game, that it started off as something completely different, like a Superman game.
Yeah.
And that WB was like, we don't want that. No, we want a looter shooter, do something different. And instead of being oh well, we'll just start over, they just took what they had and changed it.
Yeah.
And I have a sneaking suspicion, because WB is notoriously bad about basically just creating these insane deadlines, hence why we keep getting broken games out of them.
Yeah.
But
or just long ass development cycles. Literally everything that they have released recently, from Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, Hogwarts Legacy just a couple months ago,
so many times,
Gotham Knights, all of those games had Lego Star Wars was 5 years in development, a Lego game.
Yeah,
that was pretty ambitious, and it turned out pretty good. Now that I played all of it recently. Yeah. Paul, recently, you didn't put it on your list, but you went back to Lego for a little bit also to play the original.
I did
trilogy.
Forget to mention that entirely. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah. Gotham Knights, 8 or 9 years in development, 9 years actually, because Batman Arkham Origins was 2013, and that game was made by by WB Montreal.
Yeah.
Big disappointment. Huge disappointment. And Hogwarts Legacy, we all have our opinions and all that, but in general, the general consensus is that it turned out good. We can say that. It turned out good. Better than many expected. People were expecting something bad out of it for some reason, but I was when I first saw it in the state of play they did last year, I was this looks way better than I was expecting from the guys that made Disney Infinity. But that game was also 7-8 years in development.
Oh yeah.
And now this game, if it was gonna come out in a month, it was 8 years since Arkham Knight. Now it's gonna be 9 years. Management over the WB, it's a dumpster fire.
Oh god, yeah.
It's an absolute dumpster fire, and I can't imagine that Rocksteady didn't see the writing on the wall when everyone absolutely just dunked on this game to hell and high water after that state of play. That state of play did them even more harm than good, because it confirmed everyone's worst fears about it. And the worst part is, it's kind of what it says. We love looter shooters. We have we play Destiny a lot. We are in a clan. We're gonna raid later. It's we appreciate a good looter shooter when done right. For this kind of game, it's what I told Paul in our episode reacting to that. It's this feels like Blue Balls. Knowing everything that's in this game. A Metropolis, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Lex Luthor, all of that, in a really well realized Metropolis, and you play as a freaking Suicide Squad in a looter live service online only shooter. That now we're in the point where like live service is literally anathema. Whenever everyone hears live service, it feels like everyone checks out of a game. That's usually how it feels like. And I do wonder if they say that this is for polish, but I wonder if they're gonna like slowly start like unbaking the cake a little bit. And just like, if you remember that, Duncan, for Destiny 2, it took Bungie a year to unbake a lot of like their poor decisions from vanilla Destiny 2, like the double primaries, the neutered power.
It took them a lot longer than that, because we briefly discussed this, but like up until very recently, like Destiny was still suffering from decisions that they made when the game came out.
Yeah.
Like there's like we're still suffering some of those decisions today.
Yeah. so there's like, you can't fully unbake the cake, but to their credit, like they were able to reverse the majority of like the poor decisions. The others were just like fundamentally what that was. The next thing we're gonna talk in the next story, because they had like, I don't know why they announced that now, because it brought them so much grief. But like they're saying that game also was announced as online only, but they said that they're gonna patch it to be offline, like at some indeterminate point in the future. So it makes me wonder if they really were baking this as a full-on live service thing, and they're gonna Gotham Knights it, because when you play Gotham Knights, it's very clear with the million currencies, the gear system that game had. They were planning on making Gotham Knights a live service, that they yanked that out, but left a bunch of the systems in place. They just kind of like yanked it being a live service. I wonder if that's what's gonna happen here. It's a year for a game that was supposed to come out next month.
Well, I mean, it's either they're gonna take them out or add more of them.
Yeah, that would be like so tone. Like that's the thing. Like I can imagine them being so tone deaf. The leadership that made that studio, Sefton Hill, the guy that was always the face of the Arkham games, he left the studio early this year. So it was like the heads saw the writing of the wall and they decided to leave before the thing came out. And many obviously saw it's like, oh, that must be a really bad sign. But they're like, no, like the game is ready. It's been ready for a while. We believe that it's like in the right direction to launch how it should. But
and then immediately followed up with, we're gonna take a year, guys. Sorry.
Exactly. So it's like, to me, it's like a polished delay. To me, it's like the Jedi Survivor delay. That was 6 weeks. It was like the original Last of Us back in PS3, they asked for 6 weeks also for polish. And we know like how the original Last of Us launched.
Like a month or two is what polish would be.
Exactly. Especially if you knew that you were launching a game and you just need kind of like finish polishing up. A year delay to me is yes, we're going to keep polishing up, but now we're going to start like untangling this.
Like 9 months?
Yeah.
9 months is a lot of time.
Exactly. Enough time for them to like start like untangling a little bit. It's like they kind of need this. To me, if it goes offline, like if it can be playing offline, I feel that could save this game a little bit. Because if it's online only, it's like I don't feel this game has a tail. I don't feel the Suicide Squad as a concept is one that demands like an ongoing live service shooter. To me personally, it's like those are not the characters people love. Like James Gunn's The Suicide Squad movie from 2021, really great movie. No one saw it, but people love Peacemaker, the TV show. But that's different. But that's different stuff, and that happened from that. But Paul, you've been always being very vocal how you feel about the Suicide Squad. So even though you look like John Economos from the movie and Peacemaker.
Yeah, we're kind of pooping all over it right now. We need some positivity.
Oh, I don't know if you're gonna get any positivity from me on
Suicide
Squad.
Yeah.
No, especially because I love Superman,
and there's evil Superman.
Superman metaphorically had to die for them to get a Suicide Squad in Metropolis of all places, and then on top of it, giving me another evil Superman, which is a trope that I despise. Just the concept of like, oh, the Paragon's only cool if you break them. It's like, no, buddy, you missed the entire point of that. And we now see, even more so when you do it right, in somebody like Captain America and a lot of the other situations. It used to be Luke Skywalker and whatever happened with that.
Yeah.
We talked about that last night too.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan Johnson.
Right.
Gosh. And even that's a side note anyway. No rabbit trail. No. I I already wasn't super thrilled about this because I was one of those people that is a bit of a stick in the mud. I just didn't really care much about the Suicide Squad as a concept.
Yeah.
Where
You
it's
did like the movie.
okay,
though. You did like the movie from
I
2021.
did like the recent one because of how fun it was.
And you love
and
Peacemaker.
I loved Peacemaker was okay. I liked I resonated surprisingly a lot with Peacemaker himself. Where it's like realizing that people close to you are really not good people, and what do you do about that? And like when you talk a big game because of the way you look, and then all of a sudden you're a big softy underneath, and stuff like that. Where I was like, oh wow, shoot, I kind of recognize this,
Yeah.
and
And
I
then
loved
fighting a
the
gorilla
growth of him,
the gorilla
as well. Yeah, and the gorilla, sure, the gorilla. And the fact that a guy that looks tangentially like me chainsawed a gorilla that was CG. It's cool, yeah. Whatever. Anyway. So yeah, decent concept. I think it was better execution, but when the whole idea is, yeah, so the Justice League went evil, we're going to get these people to fight them. It's like you're doing so much mental gymnastics in your writing team to make it so that any of these characters survive at all to stand a chance, where it's always going to come down to the they're not actually fighting at full power, or we're going to give them some kind of broken ability to kind of negate all of this, and then it becomes the injustice problem, where it's like, okay, well, all you want is them to punch each other, and you're going to give all of the weak people a like special pill that makes them strong like Superman now, but it's like all you really need is to just not to stay in your lane, but in a sense of like make the grounded characters fight grounded enemies. Like there shouldn't be as much crossover in that, like fighting up like ultimate underdog.
So then the question
cooler.
would be, would you be more satisfied if it was something like the Justice League Dark?
I think so,
Yeah,
because they have magic.
Yeah, it's so funny. Sebastian asked us the same question. If we wanted, yeah, it was so funny. He asked us that if we would prefer this, like the same concept, but the guys we play are the Justice League Dark instead of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't change much of the gameplay, it would make more sense from a thematic standpoint, because each of those characters can and have gone toe-to-toe with the main crew, also have a nice cohesive team that they work with separately from the Justice League, and that would probably make more sense. You get your Dr. Fate, your John Constantine, your Zatanna, your
Swamp Thing.
Yeah, Swamp Thing, Deadman, like all that stuff. Like you get some crazy awesome things that you could do. And this isn't just like, oh, we stand Justice League Dark only. It's just like, let the Suicide Squad kind of do their own thing. I just feel like they shot way too hard in the literal jumping of the shark situation.
The King Shark?
So like,
yeah, they jumped the
literally.
King Shark.
Where it's like, oh, now the Justice League is evil and we gotta rely on the villains to save us. And it's like, all right, we've now seen this done a couple of times, and it wasn't really that great half the time, and it was good once.
Yeah, and I was gonna say this back in that recording, because that was also when I was having my Noah's Ark situation of the construction and me being muted and all that. And what I wanted to say back then, I can say it now, is like the only reason the Suicide Squad was picked for this was because they're the only characters that you could tangentially make sense for a looter, because they use guns. And even then, like having Captain Boomerang and King Shark with guns, like that's not the fun of that. It's like that's still like stretching
really
stretching the concept a little bit. But that's just the reason why they picked them, because they wanted to make a looter shooter. They got this idea back when Destiny was the biggest thing in the D1 era, because that's when the game would have started development. And unfortunately, it's like the whole industry moved on. We already have our looter shooters, the ones that are like mainstays.
It's gonna be the King Shark's gonna be the Hulk from the Marvel
Avengers.
Avengers game, where it's like, oh cool, I got new fists.
Yeah,
new pants.
Yeah, new
pants.
Like,
yeah. And Avengers is like such a perfect example of trying to make a looter out of like heroes that don't make sense. Like from that from that roster, realistically, The only ones that worked for looter was Iron Man, because obviously picking different stuff for like your Iron Man suit, that would make sense, but they wanted to make like a blanket thing, but that just didn't work. It's like there's just some things that conceptually don't work, and it sucks that this game is a victim of trend chasing. And unfortunately, it's like they push the bucket farther now. It's like that to me, like the only thing that saves this is that this year that they're going to take now, or close to a year, they have to retool. They absolutely have to retool it now, because everyone knows they already make fun of the shoot the purple balls. That's like just the gameplay. You can imagine, it's like, to beat Superman, shoot his purple balls. That's literally gonna be a game. I tell you, because that's what we were shown. And they gotta retool. It's like, at least at the minimum, just like eliminate a bunch of the battle passy thing. Just like do what you did with Gotham Knights. Just wash your hands of it, make it like its own thing. We don't need an ongoing thing, an ongoing thing for this, because I don't feel like we added another member of the Suicide Squad is the exciting thing that they think it is. That didn't work with Avengers, where it was like adding new heroes. Here's Black Panther, here's the PS5 exclusive Spider-Man, or things like that. It's like, that didn't work for that game, and that was the freaking Avengers. Because the conceptually just didn't work. This is not going to work. So it's like, they either retool or they die. We already know this game is dead in the water. It's like, they just like delayed the death at this point. So, but yeah, it's like, it sucks. It's like, it sucks. And parts of it look fun. That's the worst part, is like, because I could like remove it and just look at the looter side of it. It was like, yeah, I see something. I mean, I enjoyed Division for a little bit. I enjoyed, I tried to enjoy Anthem. Like, I definitely tried hard. So, well. Dunking number 2 for story number 3. This is for Duncan, because this is a game you wanted to buy an Xbox Series S to play. You told me in my chat, because Game Pass for some reason is like screwed in your PC.
Absolutely just borked. Does not work at all.
So, and you're a big Arcane fan.
I am.
Yeah. So, but you also like good performance, right?
Yes.
So
yes, I do.
Bad news for this one. Redfall would only launch with quality mode on Xbox. Story by Marcus Stewart from Game Informer. Xbox fans eager to jump into Redfall next month will initially have to make do with only one graphics option, as the game won't be launching with a performance mode. In a tweet, Arcane reveals that only quality mode will be available when the game releases on May 2. A 60 FPS performance option is coming at an unspecified date, but until it does, here's how the game will run depending on your hardware. On Xbox Series X, 4K 30 FPS. Xbox Series S, 1440p 30 FPS. Sounds like PC is the way to go if you value performance over resolution, but hopefully it doesn't take too long for the option to appear on console. I'll say this, just to jump in, it's like, I've been seeing a lot of previews for Redfall recently with Xbox prompts at 60 FPS. What an ungenuine way to like present your game that's launching so soon, and this is like the options that the console people will have. By the way, the most powerful console available. Remember all that, Paul? The 12 teraflops. It is the most powerful console. The PS5, like, coming at 10.2 teraflops, is going to be like weaker console. Like, the Xbox is going to trounce it. Yeah, the PS5 is the system that has the games with better performance, and at times like the same amount of resolution. So,
as we very quickly found out, and what was being said before the system's even released, it's not how powerful the machine is, it's how you use it. And we saw that several times before this point, but a lot of people still get caught up about those numbers and raw power. So this is just, I guess, to continue talking while this one had to be muted. I feel bad for a lot of people who are really looking forward to this release. I'm also one of the people that loves Arcane games to the point that I genuinely enjoyed Deathloop. And I still feel like one day I'd like to go back and play it from start to finish, because it's just such a solid, simple, mechanical game. And Arcane just does not miss with its weird immersion building action, honestly.
So I had to double check something, because I could have swore Redfall was built using Arcane's in-house engine. It's not. It's actually using our Unreal 4.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, it's using Unreal Engine 4. Yeah, at least
good for them.
Yeah.
But like the crazy thing is that like if that's the case, then they don't actually have a good reason to do that, because so the Void engine gets real funky between 30 and 60. Like at 30 it works fine, at 60 it works fine, but in between, like you get some weird physics that happen. Because like in Deathloop, if you ever get the chance to play Deathloop at exactly 45 frames per second, it's the most broken game you'll ever experience in your life.
And to be fair, how they did Deathloop was if you're playing that game on its performance mode, it run perfectly. That was the lock 60. So
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like in the intervals of 30, it works perfectly fine, but like at 45, it just breaks in the most hilarious ways. But no, I double checked, and it doesn't use the Void engine. It uses Unreal 4.
And the Xbox Series X has run many a game using Unreal Engine 4 at 60 frames also.
Yeah.
So
it makes no sense.
It absolutely makes no sense. And also, like, why keep promoting it with the Xbox? Even though I went back and actually there was a bunch of follow-ups of the people that previewed this game recently. Arcane previewed this game on middleware PCs. Like, that's how they were promoting this. And they were not talking about console performance then. So again, very ungenuine. But it's like, I really feel bad for Xbox. Like, they just really can't catch a break.
They blew a whole lot of money on some questionable decisions.
Exactly. I mean, like, the 7.6 billion acquisition for Bethesda that gave them this game as an Xbox exclusive, like, this was going to be one of the showcases. Like, this is a game already with a year delay. That's what's funny. And also, I think the worst part is that them announcing that 60 frames is coming later. I'm like, why not delay then? Like,
yeah,
it's like an FPS. Like at this day and age now, I feel like a first-person shooter at minimum has to always run at 60. I feel that more than any other genre has to be the genre that has to be running, like, at least has to hit it, even if it's not perfect. It has to aim at that, because that's the genre that frame rate is like more effective at. Adventure games, like more slower stuff, like you can make it work.
It also
like
could have to do with their contract with Xbox, because
we
don't know the details of what it is. Yeah, what's up?
Do you think that we could possibly see an EA Disney situation out of this Bethesda Xbox situation?
Harder, because it's like it's been acquired wholesale.
Certainly harder, but like, oh yeah, that's true, because that was more of a partnership. But in that nature of it, do you think Xbox is going to get mad enough at Bethesda for not providing the value that they were bought for, essentially?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, I don't think that's how they look at it, because I think the value they're looking at is more Starfield, and everything else is just consequential.
I guess let's say if Starfield kind of comes and goes, I don't think it will as much, but with everything else coming out this year, this is like one of those perfect storm situations that a game that like Starfield that would have killed it last year might get somewhat forgotten, or at least put on the back burner for something like this. If that doesn't sell as well as they're hoping, I think that might be a switch flipping point for them. I don't think anything's really going to happen out of it.
And remember the caveat.
They're going to actually get
caveat. These games don't have to sell. They're in Game Pass.
Yeah, they're in Game Pass. They don't have to sell. That's the weird.
That's true.
That's the fun part.
So
because
I feel, and that's what I mean. Make sense.
Yeah, Game Pass is like it's a weird creates a weird situation to the Xbox ecosystem, because what they're essentially doing with this game launching on Game Pass in a few weeks is that this is launching on early access. This is what it is, especially if them because they're not only patching the 60 frames mode, they're gonna patch an offline mode. So theoretically, if you were just selling this game, you would rather just delay and launch everything at once, because you only get a chance at a first impression. So right now, they've given the option out to people to be like, if you really want to jump straight in when this thing launches on May 2nd, sandwiched, by the way, in between Jedi Survivor and Tears of the Kingdom, already a really bad launch time in IMO. Like, because it's Game Pass, it's like, well, it's on Game Pass, we can try it, see how it feels, blah, blah. And there's been, like, I've been reading this around. I think I talked to you about this, Duncan, yesterday when we were playing that. One of the podcasts that I listened, they made one developer contact the main dude and kind of gave him some information about the one time they did like a blind test for people where they had a bunch of people like start playing a game at 60 frames and were told to, and they were being told that you can switch the graphics mode in the options menu, but they started at 60 frames. 70% of them switched to 30.
Yeah,
they because they said that they preferred the prettier graphics.
Yeah.
And
because like it's only competitive to be fair. At the end of the day, the only time FPS genuinely matters past 30 is in competitive games.
Exactly, in shooters, in most shooters.
Yeah. And like, I think this is definitely kind of like, this is a nail, whether it's in a coffin or on their certificate of being awesome. We're yet to see. But this is a nail in something.
Yeah.
Because the average person isn't going to care. The average player is going to, like, they're going to see the game, they're going to be playing it, they're going to be like, oh, this runs fine. And then whenever the performance mode comes out later, they'll probably never even turn it on.
Yeah, for the people that don't care, especially if this is like the default, because it's launching for 30.
Because it's already going to be at 4K, and they're going to care more about
the pretty graphics, even though the game looks like
okay. This is actually something that comes from working at GameStop. People are going to care more about. They can say, "Yeah, that's a 4K TV. I can play my games in 4K." They don't care at all how well it runs, as long as it isn't a buggy, jittery mess. As long as it's running smoothly, they don't care if it's 30, 45, 60, 120. They don't care.
We went through an entire generation in the 360 and PS3 where many games were aiming at 720p and not even hitting that, where they were either 30 or running under 30, that many consider one of the greatest games ever made, i.e. Skyrim, by the way, back then.
God.
So many people didn't care about that. This is just more like, the actual caring about performance is definitely more of us that are more like in the know, that are a little bit more technical, or like actually see the benefits. Like, I did break Paul, by the way, like when we first met.
That's right.
I did break Paul into like understanding just how much better 60 frames can be for like actually playing games.
Because I couldn't even see when 60 frames was happening in gameplay usually.
Well,
there was like 2 games that I could see it.
To be honest with you, it's more about frame pacing than realistically anything else.
Yeah.
Because there's 30 frame games with perfect frame pacing that feel like 60.
Yeah.
That's why Paul like
that's true.
We were actually, this is in those early episodes of the X button, when The Last of Us Part 2 got a 60 frames patch. And if you remember when that broke, you were like, well, that was not already in 60? Yeah. Remember you had that moment because
think that Uncharted 4
and Death Stranding.
Like I could have and Death Stranding, I could have sworn I was like, no, but it looked great. Like, what are you talking about? Because sometimes you can just, it's made in such a way that it works at the frame rate it's got.
Yeah, rock solid frames. Yeah, rock solid frame rate. Go for it.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I was gonna say it also helps that most TVs nowadays have variable refresh rates
that
are based off of whatever the input is. Because unlike a computer monitor where you fix the frame, where you fix its refresh rate, with TV monitor or TVs, they have a variable refresh rate ranging from as low as 25 to as high as about 100 on average,
and keeps everything looking smooth and not jittery when it's like in fluctuations.
But sorry, I didn't mean to keep cutting you off.
No. No, but like rock solid 30 frames with perfect frame pacing and good use of motion blur can make a smooth game feel like it's 60 frames. And I feel like if now this is like the flashpoint now where games that we're entering the point of the generation where we may not be seeing a lot of 60 frames games, which would suck, because if there's been something really nice about like the start of the Xbox Series X and PS5 generation, is that a lot of those games, there's been very few that don't come without a performance mode. Like last year, Gotham Knights and Plague Tale created a calamity on console because they were the first few in years that only came with 30 frames. And Gotham Knights dipped below that. Was like unstable, and Plague Tale was like more stable, but that one also had the benefit that it was an incredibly pretty game, especially some of those later parts.
Cinematic experience.
Yeah. And it worked for that kind of game, even though like it's rough playing the console version of Innocence, the first one, and then jumping to that one because the console version ran at 60. At least the PS5 and Series X version of that game could run at 60, and on Series X it could even run to 120 frames, like based on like some weird patching that the Xbox did. But yeah, it's like I feel like a nail that this. I feel the nails that you were mentioning, Duncan, is like this like hits a nail on the head, and the whole idea that the Xbox Series X is the de facto most powerful console of the two.
Yeah.
They're both like comparable in quality, but it's also been really strange that in the majority of the time, the PS5 version has been the better version of the two. Only very few times has been like the only areas where Xbox Series X version may be a little better has been like in resolution, like in a game like Hitman 3. That game has higher resolution on Xbox there, but the PS5 version is just slightly lower resolution, but has perfect frame rate. The Series X version is like dips to 40s and it's like more jittery. So it's like,
well, the Xbox also utilizes AI upscaling, whereas the PlayStation, it does as well, but they're using more of a custom firmware. So it
and
typically
checkerboard is their big thing also.
Yeah, it typically targets frames over quality. Typically, not always. Whereas the Xbox One is quality over frames, which is why, like, even though a game is targeted for 60, it'll start dipping. And to be honest with you, that the more we talk about it, that actually could be what it is. It could be because of the way the games upscale. It could be just too much pressure or too much too many missed frames and the pacing that it's able to generate using the Unreal 4 engine.
Yeah, and Unreal Engine 4 is like notorious. That's a very widely used engine, but has some good use in many cases. But then some people that bork the use of that engine. That was kind of like the big pitch of Unreal Engine 5, fixing a bunch of those problems. But we'll see. Like, Redfall is still launching on May 2nd. Like, knowing that the performance mode is happening, like, I don't have to worry about playing this game now on May 2nd. Like, I like my shooters at 60 frames, so I'm gonna play that whenever that 60 frames patch happens. Plus, I might be in the middle of reviewing Jedi Survivor anyway, so I need to be focusing. Speaking of, final story. Star Wars Jedi Survivor PC specs revealed by Blake Hester from Game Informer. Ahead of its April 28 release date, which is crazy, Paul. It's like 15 days from now.
I just did the math on that, I think, yesterday morning, and that shook me.
Yeah, it's so close. Publisher EA has revealed the PC requirements for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and most notably, is going to take up a big chunk of your computer's storage space, weighting it at an eye-watering 155 gigabytes. Here are the minimum and recommended spec requirements as posted by EA. For minimum, is that the OS can be a Windows 10 with 64-bit. For RAM, you need 8 gigabytes. Your CPU features have to be like 4 core and 8 threads. The CPU, if you're using AMD, can be a Ryzen 5 1400, and a GPU AMD has to be like a Radeon RX 580. A GPU features can use DX12 with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. You need the 155 gigabyte storage. And for your CPU, you can alternate with either an Intel Core i7 7700 or an NVIDIA GTX 1070. I'm gonna put a stop there, Duncan. Like, when you read those minimums, because you're more of a PC guy, like, what does that tell you about like how this can run? Like,
so the without getting into too much complication,
in layman, put it in layman.
The 1400, like the R5 1400, is God, when did this thing come out? The first Ryzen systems came out in like 2010, something like that.
That old?
Like, they're old.
Okay.
They are old. So because of that, you're gonna run into a lot of limits as far as like it's 2017. Sorry, I was a little off.
Oh, okay. But it's still like 6 years.
The 1400, yeah. So you're going to run into a lot of problems like thermal throttling. A lot of that stuff is just old. Whereas to give you an idea, like the recommended is actually a 6-core, 12-thread, 5600X, which came out like 2 years ago.
So 2021 specs.
Yeah, so it's also a lot faster. Basically, it's like, what's a really good way to analogize this? So it's basically, it's running versus riding a bike is the difference. To give you an estimate of like a visual idea.
Minimum versus recommended.
Right. Like, the minimum is walking. You'll get there eventually, and you'll get there with a steady pace, but it's going to take much longer because you have a shorter stride, for a whole bunch of reasons. Whereas riding a bike, it's less effort for the same distance, to give you an idea. And that's a very strange analogy, but it's also the simplest one I could think of.
But that's PC gaming. That's kind of like what me and Paul are console peasants. It's
yeah.
Like, these are the things that we don't care. But it's just so funny. Right. Like, because I'm trying to look at this, just trying to think how this will run for us on console, Paul. Like,
to be honest with you, you're gonna be fine. Because like what's in the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox are the equivalent to 6-core 12 thread processors. It's that equivalent. And then they use the same architecture, just slightly different builds. So both of them use a version of AMD's 5600 or 50, 57, 58, something like that. Series of graphics processors, but they're custom from the ground up. So they actually have a little bit more VRAM than the original one did, and they run completely custom firmwares. And that's what I mean. That's whenever I was talking about earlier, how the Xbox renders games versus how the PlayStation renders games, is that the firmwares control how everything functions, right? And the PlayStation is a lot more interconnected from the ground up, whereas the Xbox, while it can process things faster, doesn't necessarily utilize all of its components in a streamlined manner. And that's kind of always been a weird problem with Microsoft consoles, like even back on the 360. But as far as like the minimum, you'll probably run fine on like medium with like some hitching here and there, and like don't expect anything above 30. But like the minimum that it's recommend, or the minimum like specs, are also a little on the... They're older than I expected them to be, considering... Right. Whereas, like, if you look at the recommended, like, we're talking about stuff that came out in the last 3 years, basically.
And it's recommending, like, 155 gigabytes of SSD storage. So you need an SSD for that. Like, 16 gigabytes of RAM.
But,
Ryzen 5600X for CPU. The NVIDIA RTX 2070. So my laptop couldn't run it because I have a 2060, for example, for a recommended. So,
well, you'd be so... This is also the weird thing about like the naming scheme for computer components. Like the 2060, especially the mobile version of it's not that bad of a GPU. You could probably run this game because it's gonna be more powerful than the 1070, but not quite as powerful as the 2070. So you probably won't be able to run it at high. You'd probably be stuck in medium, like I said. But that might not even be true because again, like, it all kind of depends on how well everything's integrated with each other. The fact that it requires 16 gigs of RAM is kind of wild. That would suggest to me that they're trying to use... Well, two big things. The fact that they recommend AMD, first of all, and that much RAM would suggest to me that they're trying to utilize a relatively modern-ish tech. Relatively modern. That's mimics the direct storage capabilities of the PlayStation.
And the Xbox, that both use SSDs.
Yeah. Well, the Xbox doesn't have the same methodology of using the SSD.
Yeah.
But basically, the long story short, is that I did.
I heard that.
Yeah, that was like a bit. I wonder who.
That was quite loud.
Yeah.
But like basically, it's using a system called BAR, which basically allows the GPU to access the computer's RAM. Like basically gives it a larger frame buffer. So basically, you can load more assets, you can do more with it, and you can only really pull it off with an SSD, which is why an SSD is recommended. Now, I'm kind of surprised they don't recommend an M.2 SSD, because that would really be where like you'd see the highest peaks. Because with a SATA SSD, the communication way that they talk to each other isn't fast enough.
Yeah, and
that's like the most layman's way I could put that.
So that and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why console all the way. Unless you really want to get like into the weeds. To me, it's more like I really wanted to read this more, knowing that you were here. I wanted you to read it just to have an idea if the game we're getting on console, Paul, will like be a nice, like, great running game. Because usually when a game has like super high like PC specs, that worries me a little bit. Well, like how a game could will eventually like come out on console. Because like, for example, the Plague Tale Requiem like PC specs were enormous, were even bigger than this, and that game ran at 30 for us. So that's why.
Well, like, so looking at it, this is all kind of middle of the road stuff. To be honest with you, like the Ryzen 5s are the. So I'm going to give you this really weird breakdown. So whenever you look at PC components, you're looking at budget, entry, consumer, prosumer, professional. This is firmly in that prosumer range, where your average person probably won't go out of their way to buy this stuff, but someone who's on a budget but knows what they want will probably grab this stuff. Like an actual, like, someone who's trying to do PC gaming, basically, would get a Ryzen 5 5600, would get,
That's what my brother has.
a 2070 or 3070 or whatever. Like, they would get that more slightly above, like, consumer level, but not quite professional. And that's where that prosumer level is.
Yeah. We'll see how things run, Paul, like in 15 days.
It should run fine.
Yeah.
I would think so. I think the only thing that's going to get hamstrung is, as always, the Series S. I don't like that 155 gigabytes at all.
I'll say this.
I don't think anything justifies that amount.
No.
I don't think
Call of Duty never justified it. Even a game like Red Dead was pushing it. But I'll say this, Paul. I feel like for PS5 will be fine because the PS5 has the Kraken technology. Making like smaller. It manages to compress the file more than the other systems.
That it's not actually going to be 155 for the PS5.
It might be 120 for us.
Yeah, it'll still be 100 plus easy, but it won't be nearly 155.
Yeah.
Interesting.
For example, like Destiny on the Series S, for example, I once downloaded. I need 130 gigs for that one. On PS5, it's 100 something. So
yeah, it's like 108 or something.
So it's gonna be lesser, but it's still gonna be a huge chunk of the SSD. So that sucks, but gives us an idea how
live on my system. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and now I know that if I want to really play it and maybe not have like some weird hitches, I will have to install it inside the main SSD.
Yeah, you'll have to put it on the primary SSD.
On the primary SSD, so I don't have. I should send you some of those videos. That is St. Paul.
I bet they're hilarious.
Yeah, the one with the elevator is hilarious because geometry just clips through the elevator like like nothing. There's just like a big like debris just like pops out of nowhere. Like if it's a freaking first draft we're in Maya. So
oh god.
But yeah, that concludes the news, Paul. So read us the games that are coming out from April 16 to April 22.
That is going to be Disney Speedstorm on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on April 18th. God of Rock on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on April 18th. Minecraft Legends, almost said Microsoft. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on April 18th. Puzzle Quest on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 4, Xbox One on April 18th. The Mage Seeker, a League of Legends story. Huh.
Is that
PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on April 18th as well.
Is that the RPG for League of Legends? Do we know?
I think so.
It says action, so I wonder. Maybe the action game. Well, I'll look it up later. Continue.
Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Series is finally coming out on PlayStation 4 and the Switch on April 19th. Can't wait for that one.
Yeah.
Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores on PlayStation 5 on April 19th.
Yeah.
Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly.
I didn't know Coffee Talk Episode 1 came out.
I don't even remember the Coffee Talk.
Yeah.
I feel like that was one of those high art things shown at like a state of play or something.
Mm-hmm. So everything, it comes out on everything.
Yeah, it comes out on everything on April 20th. All Lost Epic. I kind of want to get this. It's coming out on Switch on April 20th, but it's already out on everything else, I'm pretty sure. Or at least it's on PlayStation 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it came out last year.
But yeah, it looked really good. And then Super Meat Boy Forever. I did not realize that was even coming out, but it is on iOS and Android on April 20th. I had a roommate that used to play Super Meat Boy, and watching that game gave me anxiety.
Yeah,
I tell you. April Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp finally coming out for the Switch on April 21, and Dead Island 2 wrapping up part of this segment with PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Stadia, and PC.
Why is it still in Stadia? That's so funny. They're still listing it. The Stadia is dead. Was that the cameo from which cat? Duncan?
That was Bear.
That was Bear.
She's apparently been in here this entire time, and I didn't know. I thought I got her out. She was hiding in a box.
That's so funny.
Classic.
And no cameo, Paul, from yours.
Not this time. Raspberry was sitting next to me the whole time. There's a rabbit jumping around in front of us down the window. He was staring at it like it was dinner.
He was hungry.
And then he jumped down and knocked over Adler's leash, which made a noise. But then he was just kind of hanging out, and now they're looking for food right now. So we'll go deal with that.
Yeah, you should stick that cat on that rabbit. Let them like kill it Mortal Kombat style.
I don't know about that one, Chief.
Yeah.
However, my other cat, Felix, who is the RBF, is great target practice for Raspberry. Walking around like a cow, just ripe for getting knocked over and smacked around a whole lot.
Yeah.
And Felix just takes it like the pathetic idiot he is.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Hey, Macaroni didn't bother you this time.
Oh, no, he was screaming, but
okay.
his mother was taking care of him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you were gonna have a Macaroni like it always happens when we're playing.
No, we closed the door before we started and kicked him out. So for a little bit, like right when we started, he was screaming at the door. But he's left now.
Yeah. It's always funny that your dog never makes like a cameo, Paul. I would expect, like, in my mind, that always, like, it's a perpetual presence.
He's usually in his playpen whenever we record. The only time he's ever shown up is whenever he's in between playpen and going outside. Lately, we've finally started trusting him with not eating things off the floor, to let him walk around the den at least. Because he'll just pick up dust bunnies and random wood chips, straw, dirt, anything. He'll just lick it up and he'll be fine, and then all of a sudden he's feeling sick and we're like, why isn't he eating? Why is he sitting there? Oh, he threw up. Oh, look, there's like wood chips and hair and stuff. So every once in a while he tries to pull something like that on us.
And my dog is always like, every time, I don't think there's ever been an episode where she doesn't bark all the time. So but
you'll appreciate this, Paul, but whenever we pet Macaroni and tufts of fur come off of him, he does the exact same thing. He'll like chase him down and eat him.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right.
Yeah. Well, that concludes this week's episode of the X Button, and your first one, not as a listener. Well, you were mostly listening, and this one it was fun.
Right?
Duncan, you're kind of like the front seat. But yeah. But it's fun having you. This has been long in the making. I've been wanting this to happen. So I hope in another time, like maybe in a week of less news, we can have you. You can tell us more stories about your time at GameStop, because I would love to hear like some fun, like some fun stuff from there. Especially knowing that
crazy stuff.
You were always the person Paul referred to when we talked about GameStop in the initial episodes when GameStop was like in a lot of trouble.
It was very much a me and these other two sane people surrounded by absolute craziness at all times in some weird shape or another. And half of them I don't even remember, but the second either you, Lulu, or anybody else from that era mentions one thing that's like, oh, you remember that weird tube sock we found mixed in with all the games? Like, I remember that.
You remember the time you found a Sawzall in the ceiling?
Yep, I remember that one too now. I remember all sorts of strange things. But yeah, it's good times. Needless to say, I'm glad that carpet finally got removed from that place because
oh god, it was so bad.
Like I said, I would love to hear more of these stories, but it's like your 8:30, right, Paul? So,
yeah, I need to go.
Yeah, and we need to try to get your raid going. So,
for concluding, if we can get everybody together.
Well, hopefully the game's back up because
yeah,
earlier,
I saw that.
Was it offline? Oh,
yeah, it got pulled offline about an hour ago.
I hope it goes back up because I can't wait for you to see that raid, Paul. Like I really can't.
If not, we could always figure something out on like a tomorrow night, and if not, next week Elizabeth goes out of town, and I can definitely do any of that.
Yeah. So, well, where can people find you, Paul?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter, and now that I have internet again, I can post all those weird clips of either breaking games or doing something dumb in them. I think I have like one from Jedi Academy, potentially one from Star Wars Bounty Hunter, I can't remember which, and definitely one from Jedi Fallen Order, I think. But yeah, I've got like 2 or 3.
I can't wait for you to keep posting more of those because I always love seeing that because your game's breaking ways mine though. This is the first time that I send you many glitches, I feel like.
That's like stuff that I usually experience, honestly. It's great.
Yeah, so Duncan, where can people find you?
At Devilish Duchess on Twitter. I randomly will post, not very frequently, but every once in a while I do.
Or some shit posting.
Oh god, so much.
Yeah,
most of what I do.
Yeah, I mean, people can find me at _Dorsegovia on Twitter, where I mostly retweet stuff. So they can also find me on Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93, and my current written content over at seasongaming.com. I'm still like sort of in the docket for Jedi Survivor. Still like there may be hope, Paul. They finally contacted the PR rep that is gonna give the game. Finally answered us. So,
true.
Yeah, cross fingers. So,
all right, let's see.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah, if they send PC code, we're screwed. that's what I'll say. Yeah, if that happens, like it's done. So let's hope they send console. But until then, just 3 more for episode 100, Paul. Well, let's see what we end up doing for that one. If we do news, we reminisce.
I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, will it land again on May the 4th? Let me see the calendar. Yeah, we'll be recording on May the 4th.
Oh my gosh.
Please let there be some awesome gaming Star Wars announcements, please. Even though we already got a bunch in Celebration, so
we'll be able to reminisce about how great Jedi Survivor was, at least.
Yeah, because we would have started playing, or we would have
potentially finished.
Yeah,
May 4th. That gives us a few days, like a full week, I think.
April 28, 29, 30, May 1st. We get like a full 7 days.
Yep, exactly.
Let's hope it's not too long. So, but until then. Duncan, we'll see you over there in the clan over in Destiny.
Yeah.
And everyone else that listen or watch, thank you so much. Thank you for keeping like those listens going. I always love seeing the stats going because I'm like, yeah, people are still like constantly listening. We got a few jumps when the clan jumped in to start listening to us. I made this joke, Paul, to Duncan before you came in, that it would be funny if randomly, because have you seen his as Dutch as anything? Like
yes.
section
every once in a while, yeah. I'll poke my head back in.
Yeah, like one day, like many people will ask them, like as much as anything, but he'll answer those things here, and they will have to tune in.
Ooh, finally getting them.
Yeah, that'd be a fun. That'd be a fun one, especially some of the stupidity that AC asks, but. But
AC asks some really stupid
It's an even rotation of stupidity and like I don't even know what they're talking about.
Oh yeah, but Paul, I'm glad you finally have internet. We've missed you. I know you've been you've been the Squidward meme of like being in the window.
I've been sitting back watching all of this happen with my favorite cyberpunk flavored place being the featured area, and I can't play it.
Yeah. And you got the seasonal story spoiled for you by accident.
It happens, but I'm kind of surprised I didn't find out about that sooner, honestly.
Yeah. But enough of that. Time to go play some games. And everyone, stay healthy, stay safe. Month is already halfway done. We're close to May and into the summer. And remember,
Press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Adios.
Bye, everybody.